Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 at 92.1 FM. Happy to be with you once again. Interesting show lined up for you. Gordy Chiesa, Tony Jones, and Nadimon Woha to talk a little World Cup. Those conversations brought to you by Beer Bar. Tony Jones Tony Jones is just going to come on, and I think I'm just going to let him celebrate his New York Knicks winning the NBA championship. Look forward to that conversation. And, you know, there's plenty of meat on the bone with the World Cup, with basketball. But the biggest story in sports today has been a story that's been circulating around and been really kind of a complicated thing to navigate for college sports in a very complicated time in college sports. This was the conundrum that I think really started to shake and break the system in ways that a lot of people never expected. Brendan Sorsby, Cincinnati transfer. Well, Indiana transfers to Cincinnati, has a really excellent showing as a quarterback for Cincinnati. Top free agent quarterback on the market this past offseason, ends up agreeing to what is reported to be $4 or $5 million deal to go play for Texas Tech. And then the gambling stuff comes through, and suddenly it all turns on its head. He gets an injunction. First he's ruled ineligible. Then he gets an injunction saying he's eligible. And then the lawsuits that we were talking about, the convoluted web being all tangled up yesterday. And suddenly, magically, to my great relief, we don't have to worry about it anymore. Brendan Sorsby, Jeff Kessler, his attorney, everyone involved has put out their new statements. Yeah, we're not going to do it. We're not going to challenge this. We're not going to fight this. We're not going to go down the road of federal appeals. We're not going to go down the road of billable hours. We're just going to say, all right, it's time to accept the fact that my behavior, Brendan Sorsby's behavior, disqualifies him from competing in Division I college football this fall. The expectation is he is going to declare for the NFL supplemental draft. He's got about a week left to do that, 6 days to be exact left to do that. And it seems like, according to all these statements, the conclusion was, yeah, we're just not going to have enough time to make an informed decision before that deadline. We won't have any results on the legalese, on the appeals of the appeals. And so eventually everyone just had to kind of throw their hands up. Cody Campbell has made himself known in the world of college sports in recent years as a billionaire Texas Tech football alum who is trying to put his athletic department and his football team especially on the cutting edge, at the forefront of all this NIL stuff. And he released this really long statement. What's the cool kids say? TLDR, too long didn't read. It's just like endless. It's like this huge thing. But in there's a key line where he says Brendan Sorsby will be stripped of his opportunity to compete at the highest level of college athletics. And therein lies the entire rub. Therein lies the entire problem the rest of college football, the rest of sports in general had with this whole debate in the first place. Cody Campbell, and by extension, Texas Tech and Brendan Sorsby, or I guess it would be in reverse, Brendan Sorsby and by extension, Cody Campbell, Texas Tech, and everyone else involved, was acting like he was the victim of a system that encouraged him to gamble rather than telling him from the very beginning he could not gamble. The president of Texas Tech, the athletic director of Texas Tech, the head coach of Texas Tech sat down on that roundtable discussion, which, by the way, they need to pay a firm to scrub that from the internet. You've got these like PR firms that for very, very astronomical prices will go and they will eliminate anything embarrassing from the internet about your past. The old nudes and the stuff that you never wish you had said on Twitter in 2004. Actually, was Twitter even out in 2004? I don't think that's true.
Yeah, Yeah, MySpace, Facebook.
Yeah.
Well, Facebook wasn't 04 anyway.
They'll scrub it. They'll scrub it for you. Texas Tech needs to pay a firm to go scrub that stuff.
Yeah.
And by the way, Cody Campbell, just delete the post with your big statement. Brendan Sorsby is being stripped of his opportunity. No, he's not. He stripped himself of the opportunity. You heard? I'm not, by the way, this is not a cutting-edge hot take, right? Dan Patrick talking about the exact same thing. Rich Eisen talking about the exact same thing. Fill in the blank. Anybody with the half a brain in sports media saying the exact same thing. You did not have anything stolen from you. You were not stripped of anything. Your behavior disqualified you from competing for Texas Tech. And by the way, I will applaud Texas Tech genuinely. They are taking a higher road than is necessary here. Brendan Sorsby, with his behavior, with his lack of disclosure on this problem he had with gambling, and Cincinnati also, with their lack of disclosure, transparency, and honesty, going all the way back to fall of 2025, lied to Texas Tech by omission at the very least. And Cody Campbell and company said, we have no plans to try to recoup any of our investment in Brendan Sorsby. They're not trying to get the money back that they've already paid him. I mean, that's a high road. I applaud them. That in order, they've doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on this. Hey, we're trying to protect this guy. We're trying to do what's best for his mental health thing. So I think they painted himself into a corner that way. But at the end of the day, a lot of institutions, a lot of organizations, a lot of corporations would say, you know what? No, you screwed us over with your lies, with your lack of transparency, and it cost us whatever the real number is, whatever they've actually given them already, $2 million, $3 million, $5 million. And, man, they decided not to go take it. So I give them credit for that. Now, the Brendan Sorsby saga is over, as far as we know it, for college sports. A cautionary tale that gives us red flags all over the place, and hopefully all of these lawsuits and all this energy and all this time that was going to be spent on battling out whether or not he was eligible in court, hopefully a similar amount of energy, time, and effort will be spent on making sure things like that cannot happen in the future, making sure the language is more clear, making sure the rules are more enforceable. I mean, there's just a lot of reasons. It was a retired judge in Fort Worth that his attorney found to be like, hey, come off the golf course for 10 minutes and just grant my client an injunction. If it's that easy, that is still a big problem, because there's another judge out there who wants his name in the headlines, or there's another judge out there who's going to take the boat that's whoever is offering as a bribe. There's another person out there who is going to be like, well, yeah, next time some kid gets in trouble, next time some kid does something that's against school rules, conference rules, team rules, NCAA rules, there's going to be another judge that's just like, well, in order for that person's mental health to be taken care of, we're going to grant this temporary injunction. So whatever effort was going to be spent in battling it out in court with Brendan Sorsby and his attorneys, take that time, take those funds that you earmarked for that legal battle, and pour them into creating a more robust system of enforceable sanction and law. And please, please, please make it so that I never have to talk about something like this again. We never have to sit down and say, can you believe what Arizona State is doing? Can you believe what Texas Tech is doing? Can you believe what Alabama is trying to get away with here? Have you heard the latest from the University of Washington and the statement they put out? I don't want any of it ever again, and I know you don't as a sports fan either. So cooler heads have prevailed. More mature thinking has prevailed. Perhaps just the reality that you probably don't have much of a chance set in for Brendan Sorsby. And now the decision becomes, well, the supplemental draft. Am I going to enter this supplemental draft? Am I going to do something in this supplemental draft? For those who are unaware, the supplemental draft is a mechanism for players who miss the traditional draft deadline or are ineligible at the traditional draft deadline and then find themselves kind of in no man's land. Usually they have an academic problem, academically ineligible. Maybe there's a criminal charge. I think it was Kayshon Boutte, the one who had gambling problems at LSU and had to enter through the supplemental draft. In any case, the supplemental draft doesn't even produce players every single year. But the expectation that Brendan Sorsby, who was anticipated to be one of the top quarterbacks in next year's draft, is now going to be a supplemental pick. Well, how will he be treated? Right now on ESPN, you're seeing they're going through the list. Terrell Pryor, Brian Bosworth, Chris Carter was a supplemental draft guy. He's I think the lone Hall of Famer who was a supplemental draft pick. Josh Gordon, remember his brief time at the University of Utah that, as far as we can tell, was mostly spent hanging out in a dorm room smoking weed? I don't want to cast any aspersions on the guy, but I never really heard any other stories about him while he was with the Utes. And if you don't know how the supplemental draft works, because why would you? It's actually a really interesting mechanism. It's a really interesting process here, right? So Brendan Sorsby is expected to put his name in the supplemental draft. And what will happen is teams with 6 or fewer wins are put into one group. That's from last season, NFL teams. Playoff teams, the remaining non-playoff teams, so anyone who is 6 or fewer wins, they're the top tier. Remaining non-playoff teams, they're the second tier. And then the 14 playoff teams are all put in separate groups. And then those are like put in a hat, and they shake up the hat, and the order that those teams get to pick or not pick based on what they want to do with the supplemental draft is then randomly selected. And this is where it gets interesting. If a team wants to select Brendan Sorsby, let's say one of the teams that had 6 or fewer wins last year is like, all right, I really like the idea of this Sorsby kid. I was going to have my eye on him in the next year's draft anyway, next April anyway. So let's say like the New York Jets or the Las Vegas Raiders. No, not the Raiders. They just picked their guy. Let's say the New York Jets or the New Orleans Saints or the Arizona Cardinals or whoever are like, all right, I'm being given an opportunity. My name gets drawn out of the hat first. I'm being given an opportunity to draft Brendan Sorsby. What you do is you bid on him with a pick from next year's draft. Whatever picks you have in next year's draft, you bid on Brendan Sorsby's services with that pick. Right? So maybe if you're a really bad team, you're going to have a high pick. You say, all right, I'm going to give up my first round pick to get Brendan Sorsby. Okay? And then they go to the next team in the order of 6 wins or less. All right. Well, the Jets said they'd give up a first-round pick. No, that's a bad example. The Jets said they'd give up a third-round pick. Arizona, what will you give up? Well, we'll give up a second-round pick. All right. Well, New York Giants or Washington Commanders, what are you willing to give up? Well, I'll give up our second-round pick also, and ours might be higher. And then maybe, just maybe, somebody's like, I'm going to raise my hand. Maybe the Kansas City Chiefs think that Patrick Mahomes is on his way out, and they're like, we'll give up a first-round pick next year because we like to shock people. And you go down through all the teams, each level, and everybody gets to bid a pick on Brendan Sorsby. And then whoever's pick is the highest forfeits that pick, but what do they get? They get Brendan Sorsby, a guy who, if all things had been equal and everything worked out the way that it was supposed to work out and he hadn't gambled, Brendan Sorsby is a guy who is going to be in the conversation as a first-round quarterback next year. So the thing that really kills you if you're close to Brendan Sorsby right now is not only did he sacrifice whatever NIL money is no longer coming his way, whatever glory and attention and whatever's supposed to be coming his way, whatever accolade he was going to add to his own resume and potentially that of Texas Tech because he can't play this year. What you sacrifice with your gambling problem is not only the assets that were coming to you in this 2026 college football season, but potentially a portion of or a significant chunk of the signing bonus that you likely would have garnered as a potential first-round pick or even an early second-round pick in next year's regular draft. And he would have been, at the very, very least, a late first-round, early second-round pick, barring any crazy catastrophe or, I don't know, maybe a betting scandal that involves his name.
Just making stuff up at this point.
And this is where it gets really fascinating for me because it is no longer college football's problem. As much as Texas Tech is like saying the right things, we will continue to support Brendan Sorsby in his road to recovery from his gambling addiction. They have to pretend like they actually care about that portion of Brendan Sorsby, even though he's not playing for them anymore, because they went so far down that road. They went so deep into that tunnel of like, this is not about football. This is about the mental health of a young man. They went so far down that road. So now they have to stay on that road as an institution, even though I don't think there's any reason for Brendan Sorsby to even be in Lubbock anymore. Whether he stays there or not, whether he hangs out with the team or not, whether we'll see him on a sideline, I doubt. But in any case, if he enters this NFL supplemental draft, which is expected, now he becomes the NFL's problem. And we're going to learn a lot about the way the NFL views not Brendan Sorsby as an individual, but how they view his offenses based on what happens in this supplemental draft. So while it is no longer a Utah problem, it is no longer a BYU problem, it is no longer a Big 12 problem or a Texas Tech problem, it is still a question that needs to be answered in the world of sports. What happens when you gamble $90,000, thousands of bets being placed on a sport you participate in, and even on teams you play for? What happens through the NFL lens? If this had been 10 years ago, the NFL would have done this kind of like punishing, throw the book at him kind of guy. Like that's what would have happened 10 or 15 years ago. Remember Terrell Pryor? You remember this.
Absolutely. It's been talked about all day on the show too. I didn't realize, I don't remember him having to serve, was it a 5-game suspension after he was drafted in the NFL because of, and then Jim Tressel, of course, lost his job at Ohio State and of course was like, okay, I can't coach in college for a year or whatever it was, so let me try to get NFL jobs. The NFL said, no, like, you're going to get suspended here too, even to Jim Tressel. Yeah, that was, I didn't realize that there were those punishments that were levied at the NFL level for those guys. But, I mean, if that's the case for something that at the time was really consequential to the NCAA, but now is certainly not consequential at all, trading their gear for tattoos, right?
That
and
was
maybe and some money, like
that's the most innocuous.
Right.
I mean, Terrell Pryor has got to be walking around today being like, can you believe what they punished me for?
And Jim Tressel too, he's like, I could still be coaching in college if that wasn't the case. But I bring
didn't he end up at like Youngstown State as the university something?
He was the AD and then the president, I think. And now he's the lieutenant governor of Ohio now. So things have worked out fine for Jim Tressel since then. But I bring that up to say, if that, which is not consequential at all in today's college sports landscape, but was back then, if that was how the NFL addressed that situation with those Buckeyes, then they ought to do a year ban of Brendan Sorsby to start his NFL career in this case, in my opinion. I
think they won't.
I'm not sure they will either.
So the last time pay attention to this. This might be something you want to pay attention to. I don't know if we're giving away something later on in the show. The last time a gambling infraction committed during college was punished by the NFL was 1963.
Who was that?
Paul Hornung.
Ah, heard that name before.
He had gambled on college games and on NFL football games while he was in college.
Okay. The other thing about this, I've heard people bring up Kayshon Boutte because he has, in the, what was it, year or two ago, however long his NFL career has been, it wasn't this past year, it was probably the year before. He admitted after he was drafted, after he started playing games in the NFL, that he bet on college games at LSU. People bring that up like, well, he didn't get suspended. How can they suspend Brendan Sorsby? Completely different situation. This came out after he'd already been an NFL player for a little bit. They can't suspend him at that. It would be wrong and probably beyond a statute of limitations, quote unquote. If they were to levy some kind of suspension, they would have gotten sued heavily, probably by the Players Association and anyone else representing Kayshon Boutte. The NFL knows this, will know this going into the start of Brendan Sorsby's NFL career. So they absolutely can say you would have been suspended, you would have been banned for at least a year in the NCAA if you were allowed to play at Texas Tech. In this case, we're going to suspend you for the first year of your career. But like you said, I'm not sure they'll do that.
It feels unlikely that they will because the relationship between the NFL and rules and gambling rules specifically has changed very drastically because of the ubiquity of sports gambling, because of the legalization of sports gambling. Now these the poly market, what are they called? The
prediction markets.
The prediction markets, which is just gambling.
Kalshi and poly market, whatever.
Those are the loopholes have been found. You can do that in Utah. Gambling is never going to be legalized in the state of Utah, like ever. But you can do that stuff in the state of Utah.
You could trade stocks on prediction market, absolutely, and you can do the daily fantasy games, which is gambling. And it's just not called gambling.
An interesting thing about the Kayshon Boutte case, which is being brought up a lot because it is an example of, what happens when the NFL catches wind of your college gambling. There's so many parallels here. Kayshon Boutte, almost 9,000 different bets placed.
I just think if he is similar, if it's different when they didn't know about that when he was being drafted, or at least it wasn't public that anyone knew about that until when he was being drafted. We knew about that after he'd been in the NFL. We knew about it after he'd been in the NFL. Interestingly enough, his infractions took place in the state of Louisiana. In Louisiana, they were pursuing criminal charges against him because it is illegal to gamble with inside information. And he was gambling on LSU games. Now, Brendan Sorsby, right, when we were going through this whole thing, it was just like, he didn't do anything illegal. And it was like, no, he did. He did. Indiana.
There's just not pressing charges.
Yeah.
Louisiana was pressing criminal charges on Kayshon Boutte. He had to agree to go through the counseling program and all that stuff. He got them dropped. So criminal charges were not pursued. But it shows that, there are layers to this. There is some precedent, although it's not exactly apples to apples for this. And the NFL, this is much higher profile than Kayshon Boutte because
he's a quarterback.
He's a quarterback because of the timing of it. Like you said, it's not like, this happened 5 years ago. This happened 2 years ago. This happened now. Yeah. This was an investigation, found him, flagged him, and said, hey, this is something that's a problem. And then it was like, by the way, I need addiction therapy, right? The timeline is totally different on this Brendan Sorsby thing. And because the circumstances are different, and probably most importantly, the optics are different, the NFL will handle it in a unique bubble. It will not handle it exactly like they handled Terrell Pryor. It won't be nearly as punitive as it was with Terrell Pryor, which doesn't really make sense when you go back and think about it.
It really doesn't, but it's a brand new world.
And it'll be handled differently than the Kayshon Boutte situation. And whichever team decides they want to take a chance on this with Brendan Sorsby, I don't know what it's going to be. We're going to have Jeff Schwartz on tomorrow to talk about, because he's deep in these circles. A personnel department in the NFL is going to look at Brendan Sorsby's tape, and they're either going to love it or they're going to like it or they're going to fall somewhere in the middle. There's nothing bad about Brendan Sorsby's tape.
Yeah, they're if he ends up getting his eligibility for not eligibility for NCAA, there's an eligibility process for the supplemental draft for the NFL. If that gets approved, so the process is, as I've read about it, just trying to familiarize myself with it this morning, OC, is a player has to apply, and then some kind of committee at the NFL approves that, and then teams can select them. And as you said, there's draft pick compensation and whatever that you can get in the weeds with. But if the eligibility for the supplemental draft is approved, I think a team's going to take him.
It would.
I don't think that we're going to have another supplemental draft since 2019 where no one's selected.
It would be shocking to me if he was not selected in this draft.
He's
in
a guy
supplemental draft. Like he, and here's the thing. He's now very easy to root for me. It's now great. You served your punishment, all right? You did something wrong. You did something you knew was wrong. And even though the punishment was not nearly as severe as it's been for people in similar situations in the past, you have been publicly dragged through the muck, some of that by your own decision-making, some of that by your own choice. But you've been castigated, right? The Game of Thrones, shame, that you were Cersei Lannister in that case for a couple of weeks, and now you don't get to play. That's a punishment. It is. Being a supplemental draft pick does not come with the same fanfare, hype, fun, or signing bonus that being a first-round or second-round draft pick in next year's draft would be, which is why I have said on the air before, I really do believe this. If I'm Brendan Sorsby, I'm treating this like Nick Bosa did his last year at Ohio State. I'm just saying, it wasn't an injury for me. It was this complication, but I'll see you guys next year in the draft.
Yeah, just work out, play next spring in the UFL.
I mean, the UFL would take him now.
Well, I mean, the season's over.
Is it over already?
Yeah, it's practically over.
I thought there was a couple more games.
I think it's playoffs, isn't it? I'll check it.
Sorry for not knowing the exact ins and outs of UFL football. That's a me problem. That's not on you guys. In any case, the difference between being a first-round draft pick, which maybe he wouldn't be because of the red flags.
Championship was on Saturday, so it's okay.
The championship was on Saturday?
Yeah.
All right. Don't play this year.
Shout out to the Louisville Kings, champions of the United Bowl.
Okay, did not even know the Louisville Kings were a team, so shout out to them.
They beat the DC Defenders. I'm sure you heard.
I knew the Defenders.
Yeah.
I know about Birmingham. Okay.
And St. Louis Battlehawks.
The Battlehawks. I know the Battlehawks.
Michigan Panthers, I think.
We know the Panthers. All right, we've had some Utah connections to the Panthers. There's like a the Brahma.
Oh, San Antonio Brahmas. That's
Brahma.
Right. That was Hines Ward was the head coach.
Oh, really?
Recently. I don't know if he's
and they're talking about Brahma Bulls. They're not talking about members of a certain caste in the Indian caste system.
Gotcha.
Okay, it's cows.
But yeah, so UFL's not an option.
Okay, UFL's not an option this year. But look, Brendan Sorsby and his team are going to do a lot more research, and they're going to figure out what's best for him. But there's a consequence here. He does not get to play for Texas Tech this year. And now I'm like, all right, crime, punishment, hopefully rehabilitation from a gambling addiction. Now you're a sympathetic character, Brendan Sorsby. You see how that works? You just made a good decision here. You just said, man, I screwed this up. That's my bad. I should not have gambled. I should not have lied about gambling. I should not have been hiding this thing. I know it's a problem. I'm getting treatment for it. And people will treat you like they treat Kayshon Boutte. Everyone roots for Kayshon Boutte. They're like, oh, man, cool that you overcame a gambling addiction.
And it helps that Kayshon Boutte is a really good receiver for a Super Bowl
and guess what?
Team Patriots right now.
Guess what? Brendan Sorsby's a good football player. People are going to root for him. The team that drafts him in the supplemental draft, they're going to root for him. They're going to be like, man, I would like to see what this kid's capable of. I'm insanely curious about the behind-the-scenes conversations because the NFL 10 years ago would be wagging their finger, don't you dare draft this gambling kid. Don't you dare. We don't want gambling anywhere near this game of ours. The shield cannot be dented, tainted, tarnished by gambling, period. Now they can't feel that way. The NFL is brought to you by DraftKings.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. We've been talking about, could the NFL suspend him like they did Terrell Pryor? I don't care what they do. The only thing I cared about is that he should not be allowed to play college football. I don't care what kind of discipline the NFL does. You would think that me being an Ohio State fan, I'm out for blood here. Hey, if you did this for trading for tattoos, then he needs to be. I don't care. It doesn't really line up if they don't suspend him, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. It's just the fact that he's not playing college football is the justice that needs to happen here. The NFL can do what they want from here. The other thing I'll say is all we have is Jeffrey Kessler's word so far that they will drop the lawsuit. We don't have an actual withdrawn lawsuit yet. So I just bring that up to say the Big 12 needs to be smart about this and keep their fresh lawsuit against Texas Tech open until they know for sure that Brendan Sorsby and Jeffrey Kessler's lawsuit against the NCAA, which has this injunction that would allow him to play if he does not get his eligibility approved for the NFL supplemental draft, he would then be able to be like, okay, never mind, I'm playing for Texas Tech. So Big 12, keep your lawsuit open until it's not over till it's over, kind of thing, is all I would say.
That makes sense. And yes, your due diligence needs to be full and complete when dealing with Jeffrey Kessler because, man, also, if you're the NFL, you're just saying, yeah, okay, you're eligible for the supplemental draft. I don't want to have to get into a legal battle with Jeffrey Kessler about this. They're going to let him in. The NFL is going to let him in. They're going to mandate some kind of league gambling treatment program. They're going to call the same people that helped Kayshon Boutte. And this is going to be a story that we smile about in 3 years. Everyone outside of Lubbock, at least. Wild stuff. But we think it's over. The Sorsby saga has come to a close. He is not going to, according to him, according to Texas Tech, according to Cody Campbell, there's no longer any pursuit of eligibility for Brendan Sorsby. Not active today, at the very least.
And Campbell also said they're not going to seek a return of NIL money.
They're not going to try to get the money back.
So he gets his $5 million presumably, and he might be drafted by the NFL.
They're not going to try to recoup any funds they've already given him. I don't imagine they've given him the full $5 million.
They probably haven't given him the whole sum, but whatever portion of that he has, they're just like, that's yours. That's fine. Which, you know what? That's probably the right move too.
Now, Cincinnati. Remember, Cincinnati was coming after him for $1 million for violating the terms of transfer. Well, guess what, Cincinnati? Now you can't get that money back because he didn't end up. He's not playing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You can't sue a guy for going to the NFL supplemental draft. Anyway, I'm done with the legal talk for now. Gordy Chiesa joins us next. We'll talk with a real New Yorker about the New York Knicks winning a championship. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, we're going to be joined here by Gordy Chiesa, brought to you by our friends at Aladdin Industries, your Velux dealer here in the state of Utah. Gordy's going to be part of our draft night, NBA draft night coverage at Big Willie's, 1717 South Main. We'll be out there at Big Willie's drinking food specials for everyone and holding our breath as pick number 2 comes through, see what the Utah Jazz get. Remember, Darren Peterson not working out for the Utah Jazz. Ace Bailey, similar situation last year, still got drafted by the Utah Jazz. So how much does it matter? We'll get to that with Gordy eventually. Our resident NBA guru joins us once again. Hi, Gordy. How are you?
Sean, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Jalen Brunson, Finals MVP, the first New York Knick to score 40 points in a Finals game. It was 45 that he finished with in Game 5 as they closed it out in San Antonio. OG Anunoby had a case also for being Finals MVP, but was Jalen Brunson the correct winner in your mind?
Oh, very much. Absolutely. He played great, including, Sean, he averaged 10.3 points per game in the fourth quarter to get that 45-point masterpiece to knock out the vastly inexperienced yet very talented San Antonio Spurs. So he's well-deserved for that. And getting back to the 45-point performance, he was only 3 other players did that. And ironically, I was there one time against them. Michael Jordan knocked out the Jazz in 1998 in that classic Game 6. He scored 45 points against the Jazz to beat us. And also Giannis scored 50 points in an elimination game and knockout. And back in 1958, Bob Pettit did it. So there's only 4 guys ever to score 45 points in a knockout game in the finals.
Gordy, we watched it happen, but we've been talking about it all through these playoffs, right? If you never lived in New York, you probably have a hard time knowing what this really means to the long-suffering New York Knicks fans. And you're a long-suffering New York football fan, but you're not anymore a long-suffering New York Knicks fan because they won this championship. But watching it as a guy who has intimate knowledge of what it's like in that city around this team, watching it unfold, I mean, 53 years in the making, what was it like?
It's special. It's generational. It connects all walks of life, whether you're 8 years old or 80 years old. It's something you remember forever, and it's a connector. And that makes it so special, sports. You can't explain it until you go through it, where it doesn't matter how tall you are, how big you are, your affiliation as far as religious, it's irrelevant that you're all a fan. And this is, quote, for a fan base, this is our team, and now it's the Knicks. And then Jalen Brunson and the rest of the Knickerbocker players, they're a bunch of good guys that they never get in trouble. Think about Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns, Jordan Clarkson, Mitchell Robinson. Those guys, they just play. They're never in trouble. And that's refreshing. And that's why they're champions, that they played as a group. And Jalen Brunson, for anybody that's under 6'3". So Sean, just quickly, I want to bring this out because the draft's next Tuesday. We'll be doing it, you and I and Smitty and Spence on the air, is that there's this thing about, certain like height, et cetera, and metrics. But Jalen Brunson is the classic example of height over heart. And Jalen Brunson type people, inch for inch, pound for pound, they're winners. So here's some guys in the NBA that probably would not fit the metrics as far as the criteria that without these things, you won't be able to play well in the NBA. And Jalen Brunson, we know that is a direct opposite. He's played great. So example, guys under 6'3" in the NBA that have played very well. Kyrie Irving, Dame Lillard, Jalen Brunson, Therese Maxey, De'Aaron Fox, Trae Young, TJ McCollum, Darius Garland, Freddie VanVleet, Dennis Schroeder, Peyton Pritchard, TJ McConnell, and Colin Sexton. And of course, there's always Stephen Curry, Chris Paul, Kyle Lowry, Mike Conley, and the number one guy in all our hearts is a guy named John Stockton at 6'1". So it's a myth about certain things. You're not a certain height or certain length or certain width, that means you can't play well in the NBA. Or, Sean, in the NFL where it's a quarterback, oh, this guy lacks this thing, this thing, this thing. Oh, yeah, there's certain guys that are winners that no matter what they perceive lack, they make up what? With intelligence and courage, and they've got heart, and they have this big play mentality.
For Mike Brown, who obviously is a highly respected coach in the association, a guy who's been a champion as an assistant, he gets over the hump as a head coach for the very first time with the New York Knicks of all teams. What does that do for his career? How does it change your reputation and the way you're looked at as a coach when you win one as the head man?
Also, so before I say the answer, he got fired 4 times in his career. So
yeah.
Guy gets fired 4 times,
yeah.
And now we're talking about and praising him. And that just shows you that the coaching profession, again, there's an axiom we always talk about, you get hired to be fired. So even though it's painful, it's all part of it because you can't win all the time. And so much is the expectation level of your either ownership or if it's a college sports, the administration, the perception of you did a lesser job or you did a great job based on the circumstances. And so for Mike Brown's career, good for him. Good coach. He always was. He fell short a few times. Expectation was really high around him. This time it was the perfect scenario with the coach. Tom Thibodeau, I might add, the previous coach, he set the foundation for this group to win. And then Mike Brown got them over the hurdle just by a year older. Remember, let's not forget, last year the Knicks lost in the conference finals to Indiana Pacers with Halliburton in that group 4-2. So they came back this year with a lot more experience and also an awareness of what it takes to win. Now, from the Spurs' point of view, is that they're going to be a force in the next 15 years. Now, it doesn't mean next year they're going to get back to the finals. It doesn't work that way. So you and I mentioned that this is the 8th straight year of a different NBA champion. So Mike Brown, let's give him kudos. Tremendous coaching job. But more importantly, without the players, he wouldn't have won.
Would he have had the same players at his disposal if Jalen Brunson a couple seasons back hadn't said, you know what, I'm going to leave $100 million over the course of this contract on the table. You don't have to give me the Supermax extension. I want there to be some wiggle room to surround me with talent. I mean, obviously it's being talked about, but how significant was that and the foresight that Jalen Brunson and I guess his agent, I guess everyone around him must have had, saying you're a great player, but you're going to need something else with this New York Knicks team. They used that money, at least indirectly, to help get guys like Mikal Bridges, guys like Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, did the New York Knicks win if Jalen Brunson took the max money? How significant was it?
Huge. They don't win. That's exactly right, Sean, because that was the Karl Anthony Towns trade with Dante DiVincenzo and other pieces of it, and Julius Randle. And that with Anunoby, who's a tremendous two-way player. I wish the Jets would have someone like that, where they would help the guy who can score 18 a game, but he can defend, he can rebound. So his contract was put in place because Brunson took the discount and Mikal Bridges also. And so he did the right thing he saw it differently, and most guys don't. Now, I know that we're talking about it now, and that as always, what am I worth in the marketplace? That's any business as far as what are they going to pay me? What am I worth? He took a discount, and it worked out for him beautifully. And for the next 50 years, they're going to talk about him and all his teammates. Now, Brunson still makes a great contract. His contract next season is $37.7 million, 27-28, $40.5 million, and in 28-29, $43.3 million as a player option. And his agent is Sam Rose of CA Sports. And so they read it right correctly. He's a unique person. Villanova, great. People realize like Jalen Brunson, he also graduated from college in 3 years. So he's an intelligent person that's got heart and understands the present tense and the big picture. Good for him. Good for the Knicks. Good for Villanova. And good for everybody that wants to do the right thing.
Gordy Chase is our guest here for a few more minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things NBA, but especially the fallout of an NBA Finals Now let's look at it through the Spurs lens. You and I, we both love watching Victor Wembanyama. He's the present. He's also the future of the NBA. I think we saw some things in this series that just showed you, experience still matters. Inexperience, his youth, these are still factors. Even when you're that big, you're that long, you're that talented. There were just some moments where Victor was not ready. He wasn't clutch. He wasn't, necessarily the guy that Jalen Brunson was. How do you look at those when you're a guy who's coached for and been around the league as long as you?
It's painful. You look at it as far as pain, and that make this pain as far as the motivation, and the pain meaning that in Game 5, just for example, now you can make a discussion that the Spurs could have, would have, should have won many of these games, but they didn't because the Knicks were tougher mentally. In Game 5 at home, where they had to win to try to keep the series going, in the last 8 minutes, the Spurs shot 3 for 16. Fox goes 0 for 4, Wemby goes 0 for 3, and Dylan Harper goes 1 for 5. And so they go a total of 1 for 12 during that time, those three guys, and the group shot 3 for 16. And this shows you that you've got to be able to make clutch plays, and that's on both sides of the ball. They'll learn from this. It's painful. As always, just don't make it fatal. And they'll come back next year much more stronger mentally, especially in the playoffs. And that's the goal for them. Wemby's great. Wemby in his finals, he averaged 26 points per game, 11.2 rebounds, 3.6 blocks. But he shot an ugly 27% from threes, and it was misguided. There are many times he just fired threes where he should have swung the ball and cut to the basket, or stay in the mid block to get the ball and take that one dribble either for a jump hook or a power move or kick it out for a rhythm three. He'll learn from that. And so will his teammates too.
Gordy, have you ever lost 5 games or 4 out of 5 games when you've had a double-digit lead?
I have not, no. But I can only imagine what it's like. Sean's alluding to right now about the Spurs. And again, they're right there with the Knickerbockers, but they didn't execute under pressure. And that's that magic word. What does it mean, execute? Execute means that the majority of the time when you have a lead, you still play aggressive on both sides of the ball, but you respect the possession. And that's the reason you're up by double digits. And what happens a lot of times is that you fall back into it's going to be easier. The opposing team's defense kicks up 3 notches and gets after you, and that you take the exact same shot, or when you do penetrate, you don't finish at the rim, or you go 0 for 2 from the foul line, and momentum changes. And momentum is this thing during games where 3 or 4 possessions in a row that become negative on your team becomes positive on the other team, and that now makes the game, the momentum shifts in the game, and you have to be stronger. You have to be strong mentally. So, for example, you're fighting for your life in a game, and you come out of a huddle and you get a turnover right away, and that's things that negate everything you talked about in the huddle to try to slow down momentum. Mitch Johnson also, as a younger coach, though very talented, possibly he'll look back at these playoffs and he'll say to himself, what could he have done better? And just generally speaking, it's shot selection. It's changing the look of the defense. Looking back now, he probably would have thought maybe let's play some zone defense to take Jalen Brunson out of that unbelievable pick-and-roll game that he scored on. So they'll learn from this, both teams, both players and coaches and organization, of what they need to do. Keldon Johnson, the 6th man of the year, was invisible during the whole NBA Finals. And so it's all part of the reason why they slightly fell short.
Gordy, how much should we care that Darren Peterson is not working out for the Utah Jazz?
Not at all. Zero. None. Zero. That's all done by his agent. That's done by his agent, Wasserman Media Group. So it doesn't work out for the Jazz only with the Wizards. Let's not forget now, Ace Bailey last year did not work out with the Jazz, and the Jazz drafted him still number 5. I'm assuming Ace loves living here, and he seems like he's a very joyful person. Also, other players, Sean, quickly over the years have not worked out for the team, and they still drafted him. Ben Simmons didn't want to work out with the 76ers. They still drafted him. Lonzo Ball back in 2017 told the Celtics, please don't draft me. They did at number 3. They're grateful they didn't because they drafted Jason Tatum. Talk about good luck by them, and which is great fortune for the Celtics. And the Lakers drafted Lonzo Ball at 2, which they later regretted. And number 1 drafted by the Wizards was Markelle Fultz, which they absolutely regretted. Last point about that is that remember back, Sean, with 2009, Steph Curry's people, Jeff Austin of Octagon Sports, he begged the Knickerbockers, please don't draft my client. They did not draft him. And at number 8, because at number 7 is that they got a huge break by the T-Wolves, with the T-Wolves at number 5 and 6, Sean. Instead of drafting Steph Curry, they drafted number 5, Ricky Rubio, point guard, and number 6, Johnny Flynn, yikes, of Syracuse as a point guard. And that's when the Warriors drafted Steph at 7, and the rest is history. So the agents are involved full force. If I'm the Jazz, I don't blink at all. 0. No, there's no blink at all. Peterson at 2, I'm sure they're going to try to take him.
All right, Gordy, what's your list today?
Sean, can you imagine this Steph Curry without the Warriors? Would they be like?
No. I mean, well, I can't imagine it because we saw the Warriors with like kind of a unhealthy, injured Steph Curry for a while before his run really got started. And I guess we kind of remember what that looked like.
Sure. It wasn't pretty.
No.
But with Steph in the group, it was pretty. My list today is also pretty. NBA Finals, last 10 years, the NBA Finals MVP award winners. I remember, it's so ironic. The MVP Finals award winner trophy is named after Bill Russell, who never won it because it wasn't invented when he played. That's how crazy the whole thing is. All right, the last 10 years, 2017, Kevin Durant of the Warriors. 2018, Kevin Durant of the Warriors. 2019, Kawhi Leonard of the Raptors. 2020, LeBron James of the Lakers, and that was the bubble MVP. 2021, Giannis of the Bucks. 2022, on point, Sean, Steph Curry of the Warriors. 2023, Finals MVP, Nikola Jokic of the Nuggets. 2024, Jaylen Brown of the Celtics. 2025, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Thunder. And this year's award winner of the NBA Finals MVP, Jalen Brunson of the Knickerbockers. One quick note. Back in 1969, when they first started this, as far as the MVP, that was Bill Russell's last season, but the MVP went to the only time ever where the non-winner of the finals, as far as his team, was named MVP. That was Jerry West, was selected as the MVP. It's the only time it ever happened. Also, quickly, Michael Jordan has won 6 finals MVP, and LeBron James has won 4. 1 with the Lakers, 2 with the Heat, and 1 with the Cavs. So you're in ratified company being the finals MVP. It's unbelievable hard to do. All these players, most are heading to the Hall of Fame. That's how brilliant they are.
I'm looking at the list now of the all-time NBA Finals MVPs, and I mean, I think you have the random Andre Iguodala year from 2015, but beyond that,
yes.
It's like, yeah, it's a bunch of Hall of Famers.
Yeah, it's amazing how hard it is. Winning the finals, it's so hard. Just to get there is an accomplishment, but actually to win it, it's a once in a lifetime for players. And if you're fortunate with other trusted teammates, Sean, you might have a great run. Meaning the most recent was the Warriors, and before that was the Bulls, where Michael played. He was MVP for 6 years. He went to baseball in between. It might have been 8 straight years. That's how great he was. And that's how hard it is to do. And everyone thinks that we'll do it next year as far as repeat champion. And we know right now, the last 8 years, it's been very hard to do. Let's go NFL quickly. Sean, that's Tom Brady, right, in the NFL. Joe Montana. That's how hard it is. Patrick Mahomes.
Gordy, thank you for a great list. Thanks for your time again. Appreciate you, sir.
Thanks, Sean. We'll talk soon. Peace out.
Gordy Chiesa here on the Sean O'Connell Show. He'll be part of our NBA Draft Show coverage, which, of course, is coming at you from Big Willie's Tuesday night, 6 p.m., 1717 South Main at Utah's #1 sports bar and pool hall. All right, we'll take a quick one. We'll talk with Tony Jones next of The Athletic. It's ESPN 700 at 92.1 FM. All right, we're going to grab Tony Jones here in a second from The Athletic, talk about the upcoming NBA draft. Not only are the Utah Jazz dealing with the theatrics and the questioning of this Darren Peterson not coming to Utah to work out thing, but the conversation with restricted free agent Walker Kessler appears to have reached an impasse of sorts, where Walker Kessler and his team are reportedly not overly thrilled with the Utah Jazz front office and their offers for an extension. I'm still a believer, like, you're probably going to get this done. Part of the whole thing, part of the whole negotiation process is you kind of got to pretend that you're bothered. You kind of got to pretend that, that offer's not good enough, right? We've all done this. We've all been haggling at the table of some vendor somewhere. No, come on. That's too much. Give me that exact thing for half the price. And they offer you that first number, knowing full well you're not going to pay it. At the end of the day, I think that one is going to get done. We'll see. Also, Walker Kessler, if you're ranking players on this Utah Jazz team in order of their importance to what the Jazz are trying to do moving forward, where does he actually sit? I mean, he's a really good player. I think, especially for the defensive kind of identity you want to start building, Walker Kessler is very, very important for this Utah Jazz team. For Will Hardy to be able to play the kind of basketball he wants his organization to play, you need somebody like that. Now, Jaren Jackson Jr. can be like that. Do you really want him playing the 5, though? The vision that everyone came up with was like this 3 towers, the Trey Towers kind of a situation where you've got these 3 towering big men in the middle, Lauri Markkanen being a stretch, in that case, super tall 3, I guess. We'll see how it plays out with the Utah Jazz. We'll see how it plays out with this upcoming draft. We're going to be at Big Willie's at 1717 South Main, making sure that you get all the coverage. It'll be Spence, it'll be Gordy Chiesa, it'll be Smitty, and it'll be myself hanging out, talking about the prospects as their names come off the board. And, of course, you don't have to wait long. If you come down to Big Willie's right around 6 p.m. on Tuesday night, we'll have the food and drink specials. They'll do the big preamble, right? The crew will be talking about all the prospects. Number 1, AJ or Darren Peterson. Number 2, AJ or Darren Peterson. Number 3, probably Cam Boozer, Caleb Wilson. Draft really starts, depending on who you talk to, at 4 or 5. But I guess if there's some gamesmanship and some sort of posturing taking place up there with that number 1 pick, maybe it begins a little before that. Utah's number 1 sports bar in Pool Hall, 1717 South Main, hosting us for that. Also, reminder, dads deserve a day at Lagoon. Father's Day, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, giving you a chance to win a 4-pack of passes to Lagoon. Thrills, family fun, great memories, they all come together at Lagoon. Listen right here all week to score 4 passes to Lagoon. Father's Day fun from Lagoon and Utah's number 1 sports talk on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, our next guest, Tony Jones. I don't know if he's still floating around in the clouds. I don't know if he's come back down already. At long last, the New York Knicks have won a championship, and I think he might have some feelings about that. Tony Jones, how are you?
I was streaking in the parking lot of my apartment in Blackwood, New Jersey, screaming "Go Knicks" 72 hours ago. But I had clothes on. I'm sorry, Utah people. I just want y'all to know I had clothes on. Like when I say I was streaking.
When you say streaking, it suggests something else, Tony.
I know it does, but I just want to let you know there were clothes involved.
All right. The scenes were absolutely incredible of New York and of the entire reaction to a 53-year drought being broken by Jalen Brunson and company. And, we've talked about it from a lot of different angles. There was a significant amount of Spurs collapse over the course of that series, blowing double-digit leads and things like that. But I think credit where it's due, Jalen Brunson being a guy who not only has the confidence, the ability to carry a team to a championship. But if you go back, the foresight to know that he might have to sacrifice a little bit of his own money financially in order to surround himself with the necessary pieces to make that happen, which of course is atypical in NBA circles with NBA players. It's frowned upon by some because you want to max out when you can max out. And I want your thoughts on how significant that move was for Jalen Brunson and then attaining this championship a couple years later.
Well, I mean, it was unprecedented at the time, and you know, I think the backlash beyond that was, yeah, you know, you are a great guy. You are obviously giving back a lot of money, but you know, the thought at the time was you're going to be giving back a lot of money without the ultimate payoff for a championship. So the fact that, you know, he won a championship, you know, validated that. And now, you know, when his next extension can come, you know, it's time for the Knicks to pay the piper, and they're going to have to back up the Brinks truck, which, you know, you expect that they will. But, you know, for a guy to, you know, of his stature at the time to take, you know, $110 million after, you know, the couple of seasons that he had, the couple of initial seasons that he had in the Knicks uniform, just to be able to give them the financial flexibility to round out the roster and get guys that fit with him. Obviously, that paid off, you know, big time in this run. And, you know, the Knicks, I mean, you can't say anything other than they were by far the best team in the NBA during this playoff run. They went 16-3. They won 15 of their last 16 games. They won all of their road games in the last 3 rounds. They beat a 62-win team. They beat a 62-win team 3 times on the road in the finals. You know, so, you know, there's no context to this Knicks championship. They were simply the best team in the field, and they proved it over and over and over again.
Are people around the NBA going to play copycat league and try to do what the New York Knicks have done? I know it's easier said than done to try to copycat, and there's not a lot of Jalen Brunsons out there. You know, he's not built like the typical game wrecker. He's smaller and shorter than most of those guys. But is there a lesson to be learned for the rest of the NBA from this Knicks team and the way that they did it?
I think the biggest takeaway that you can take from the Knicks run isn't, you know, the copycat of the roster or the way it was constructed, because I think the roster is constructed, you know, really uniquely. Like, you know, how often can you get, you know, 3 guys together who won 2 championships in college and who are all best friends? I mean, that's not replicable. But what is replicable is the fact that the Knicks, you know, despite there were multiple times, you know, after losing to the Pacers, you know, there are multiple times, you know, there were multiple times where they stonewalled in the second round, and then they stonewalled in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they were like, well, this is it. This is the pinnacle of this group. They can't go any further, until they did. So, you know, I think the thing to take away is you have your core. You figure out who your core is. You figure out how much time your core has left. And then you keep making smart move after smart move after smart move to build and build and build around the core until in this landscape, in this NBA landscape, is actually your chance and your time to win a championship. We didn't know that it was going to be the Knicks' time. And, you know, a lot of people didn't know how good the Knicks were pretty much until they hosted the Larry O'Brien Trophy. But if you look at this run and you look at this roster, I think there were so many people who, you know, beyond the core, who contributed to the obvious payoff. You know, Mitch Robinson had that big rebound down the stretch in Game 5. Jose Alvarado had that big second half in Game 4, which allowed the Knicks to come back. Jordan Clarkson had really good minutes in Game 4, in Game 5. So there were guys beyond the core who, did little things to contribute, and it accentuates and highlights if you just keep making smart moves and you keep adding little depth pieces, all of that stuff adds up to the sum of the whole, and that's what the Knicks did, and that's what you could take away from it.
Tony Jones of The Athletic is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about the result of the NBA Final. We'll get to some Utah Jazz discussion and an upcoming draft here in just a second. Did you see anything from a young Spurs squad, from Victor Wembanyama, in some situations where they choked away leads, that is of actual concern and you don't think is correctable, pretty quickly?
I'm just of the opinion that they didn't choke. The Knicks took it from them. If you lose in the exact same time 4 times out of 5, and 3 of those games are at home, then it's not a choke. It's that the other team is just better in those spots than you are.
Yeah, but there were some things where like the Spurs were up 20 points and shooting 8 threes consecutively, like that. Credit to the Knicks for taking advantage of the mistakes that the Knicks were making, or that the Spurs were making, but like some of that was self-inflicted, and obviously you have to be a great team in order to make a team like the Spurs pay for that. But some of it was like Mitch Johnson will never do that again, you would hope, right?
So it's actually really interesting that you brought that up, and I'm going to disagree with that, and this is why. What the Spurs did to the Knicks, if you notice, they came out every single game and they were extending and guarding 94 feet every time. Pedal to the metal, full court defense. We're going to harass Jalen Brunson. We're going to harass every Knicks ball handler. And they built a lead every single game because their legs were fresh. They were making shots. And then what happened in the second half? When they kept doing that, the shots stopped going in. They started turning the ball over because they punched themselves out. They played rope-a-dope for 5 games like George Foreman and Muhammad Ali, and they paid for it. And that's not self-inflicted. That's the Knicks just being better and more well-conditioned over 48 minutes. That's why people always say you can't full-court pressure in an NBA game for 48 minutes. There's too many possessions. The game is too fast. The possessions go too fast because there's only 24 seconds every possession. And the Spurs tried to do that, and they punched themselves out in every single game, and they had nothing left. So, to your point, if you're Victor Wembanyama, you got to get in better condition. And I think that's something that can be rectified in an off season. And if you're Victor Wembanyama, you have to find something that you can go to in the last 5 minutes of a game. He had no idea what he wanted to do offensively in high leverage situations. That's something that usually comes with time. But overall, I just think the Knicks were the better team, and I think that there's this talk that the Spurs choked away 3 or 4 games of the series, and I just don't see it that way. I think the Knicks took every game of the series, and I think that the better team won the series because the Knicks were the better team over 48 minutes, not 24 minutes or 12 minutes.
Well, I won't debate that, and I don't think there is a debate on that because, credit where it's due to the New York Knicks for being the deserving team to win this championship, and the scenes were absolutely epic, like we said. All right. Moving on to the NBA draft coming up and some things happening in the Utah Jazz world. Darren Peterson is not working out for the Utah Jazz. We've been through this before with Ace Bailey very recently where, everyone got all up in arms about it, and there was some narratives about, that means he doesn't want to be here. There were conversations about how much it matters if a player wants to be in a certain place or not. How do you interpret no workout for the Utah Jazz from the projected number 1 or 2 pick, a guy that is very likely to end up in a Jazz uniform?
I think it's like the biggest nothing burger of all nothing burgers of all time. And the Jazz don't care if Darren Peterson's there at number 2, and Darren Peterson's the guy that the Jazz want to draft. They're not going to hesitate to draft him. If the Jazz are number 2, and AJ DeBanton went number 1, and the Jazz picked Cameron Boozer over Darren Peterson, it means that Cameron Boozer was the number 1 player on their board, not Darren Peterson. So, I mean, when you're around long enough, and I've been around this since 2014, you see all of the posturing, and you see, all of the pre-draft stuff, and it just is what it is. It always happens like that during the week. During the weeks leading up to the draft. Ace Bailey didn't work out for anybody last year. So it wasn't just the Jazz he didn't work out for. He had a workout scheduled for the Sixers. He canceled on that. He was, clearly trying to get to Washington because, Washington had a handshake deal to hire Omar Cooper. So, it didn't matter. The Jazz drafted him at 5. And, everything's been, relatively honky-dory for Ace and the Jazz ever since. It'll be that way with Darren Peterson if the Jazz draft him. And by the way, if I'm Darren Peterson, I very much want to come to Utah because Utah is by far the best fit for Darren Peterson in this draft. So to me, it's nothing. I understand the hand wringing. I understand the talk. I understand, why the conversation exists. But, for me, it just doesn't matter one way or the other. The Jazz, have long proven that they will draft somebody who hasn't worked out for them. They did in 2014 when they drafted Dante Exum. They did last year when they drafted Ace Bailey. They'll do so this year if they draft Darren Peterson.
You and I have not spoken since that little survey. The results of that survey came out that Memphis is the least desirable location among NBA players, at least the ones surveyed. And I think the Jazz were like 5th from last, which is upward mobility for a Utah Jazz franchise. How much has the reputation of the franchise, the community, the destination as a place to play really changed for the Jazz? Kind of on the spirit of the same sort of question.
I'll tell you a little known Tony Jones story. So 2012, I'm ticked off because I just got passed over for the Jazz job at the Salt Lake Tribune. I was up for the Jazz job. I didn't get it. They went with somebody else. I thought I should have gotten it. I was ticked off that I didn't. And then, so, out of nowhere, the Memphis Commercial Appeal comes calling. And they have a job covering Memphis. I think it was like Memphis football. And I would have been the backup on the Memphis Grizzlies beat. And this was 2012. My kids were 8 and 3 at the time. So, I go down to Memphis. They bring me down for an interview. And I interview with, the paper. I love the interview with the paper. I love the people. They took me to one of the barbecue joints. The food was great. And, 3/4 through the interview, I'm thinking, wow, I think I'm about to come to Memphis. And then they took me on a tour of the city. And on that tour of the city, when they took me around the city, my one thought was, I cannot do this to my kids. And that was the end of me moving to Memphis. So I kind of understand it. I don't know how the Grizzlies as an organization treats their players. I do know in comparison how the Jazz treat their players, which is, like really A+ in terms of facilities and in terms of amenities, things like that. and I think that makes a difference. But Memphis as a city is, sad to say. I mean, it's kind of run down, and it's not the greatest place. Um, it's not the greatest place to raise a family. So, I kind of understand where NBA players are coming from. I probably wouldn't have said it as directly and, unabashedly as a lot of players are saying it, because I think that, obviously there are going to be hurt feelings involved, but, it's not something that's come out of nowhere. And I don't think that there's something that's unfounded.
Last thing before I let you go, the apparent impasse that has been reached in the Walker Kessler extension negotiations. What's going to get us over this hump?
Well, I think it's become a delicate situation, because I'm not sure that at this point that it's actually even about the money at this point. So I think, if you're the Jazz and you are Walker Kessler and Walker Kessler's people, just getting into a room, and I think it's going to take, I don't even think it's going to take one meeting. I think it would take, several conversations, several days of, face-to-face conversations of kind of, getting grievances and frustrations out on both sides, and, just expectations going forward. I still, overwhelmingly think that Walker Kessler will be in a Jazz uniform in the year 2026, 2027. My question is how long he will be in a Jazz uniform beyond the year 2026, 2027. And I think that, for the roster that the Jazz have constructed, Walker Kessler's value is absolute to the Jazz. If they plan on getting stops in high leverage and high level situations, Walker Kessler better be on the floor, because there are not a lot of point of attack defenders on this roster, and there are not a lot of people on this roster who can keep other people in front of them at a high level. So, I think, just going beyond that, the two sides, just have to talk some things out, because, like I said, I don't think at this point that, I don't think that at this point this is a normal contract impasse thing. I think this goes beyond that. And I think that there needs to be some mending on both sides.
Interesting. We will keep a closer eye on it. Congrats on your Knicks winning it. Appreciate you giving us some time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I shall go streaking again.
With clothes on.
With clothes on.
All right. Love you, dude. Miss you. Appreciate your time.
Love you too, my guy. Appreciate you guys. Thanks to you and James, as always.
Tony Jones of The Athletic. All right, we take a quick one here. We come back. Nate Bonwoha, ESPN soccer analyst, former RSL man. He is covering the World Cup. 4 draws yesterday in 4 games. Is that problematic for American fans? We'll get to all of it next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Time to talk a little soccer, a little football here on the Sean O'Connell Show. World Cup action starts up again here in about 24 minutes. Full slate again today. You had 4 games yesterday. All 4 of them ended up draws. Spain, Cape Verde, Belgium, Egypt, Uruguay, Saudi Arabia, New Zealand, Iran. All of those games yesterday ended in ties. Spain and Cabo Verde was a scoreless tie. We'll talk about all of it with our next guest, ESPN soccer analyst, former RSL man, Nadim Onwoha joins us here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Nadim, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm superb. How are you?
I'm doing great. Excited to talk a little World Cup. I will freely admit that, soccer is not exactly my wheelhouse, but kind of like with the Olympics, I get caught up in the hype every 4 years. And I have found that, especially with this as a North American World Cup, played in cities and oftentimes in stadiums I've been to, I've seen, I've watched, the regular denizens of those stadiums occupy. It's really, really fascinating to see the way that, the international community has descended upon North America and these American stadiums in particular. And I just kind of wanted your perspective on, what this World Cup really means, especially as a North American World Cup, and the one being played in the United States, where Team USA off to a really good start. We can get to that here in a second, but just a host nation that probably needs a little good PR right now. And I think that the tournament is providing it, at least so far.
Yeah, I think it certainly is. I think in terms of trying to describe what this tournament means, I think it depends on your own perspective as such. But I love the fact that in North America now, we're getting a chance to see how significant the World Cup is. I think somebody like yourself and millions of others, they know soccer. They don't necessarily appreciate soccer. They casually watch soccer, but you very quickly realize that to fans from all around the world, like, this tournament is everything to them. And that's why they travel from far and wide to get a chance to come to watch their team wherever they're playing. Like, why are there so many Scots in Boston? Why are there so many Argentinians in this place? Why are there so many people in that place? And as well, you get the people from around the country as well who have links to these other countries coming forward, and you get a chance to feel the atmosphere. Because for these guys, the soccer, the games, is everything to them. This is their identity. I think even you look at the very first game that was had, and Raul Jimenez scores a goal for Mexico, and you see him brought to tears, but there are people crying in the stadium as well. The people around Mexico almost brought to tears. You see the goal when Canada scored in Toronto, and the passion from all those fans as well. And for USA, I think it was 18 million people watched the game, the very first game against Paraguay, which was, I believe, was a telecast record in English language. So you see the significance, and you see how other teams feel about the tournament as well. And it's been very well supported so far, and there've been some good games as well.
How surprised were you by that result against Paraguay for the U.S. men's national team? 4-1 is probably not what a lot of people had on the bingo card. They got the scoring started early and really dominated a lot of that game. And Paraguay's a decent squad. I don't know, you know much better about where they stack up with the rest of this field. But were you surprised by that first game result for USA?
I think two things can be true, and I think Paraguay very much underperformed. But then I also believe some of that was because USA were excellent. And I think when we talk about the USA in particular, the golden generation talk, then a lot of it's been about potential. And I think for the last few years, knowing this tournament's coming up, this is the thing that's had the big circle around it. How are they going to perform on in this competition that is based at home for them? And they were very much on the front foot. They put so much pressure on Paraguay. The noise was up in the crowd. The players were well and truly up for it. And they basically took total control of the game, which was a surprise to many. But I think when you see how good those players are, you should understand that this is the type of thing that can happen. I think it's worth not going too far in terms of excitement, believing that everything's going to be positive now, because football, soccer can hit you with some real harsh realities very quickly. But to be able to have that game, for those players to make history, for those players to feel that
World Cup for the U.S. men's national team, how likely is it that you start to confront that on Friday when you take on an Australia team that I think also some people when you take on an Australia team that I think also some people felt overperformed in their first match?
Yeah, I think they overperformed in sort of different ways, though, because the USA were favoured to potentially win their group, because the talk was the third group game was going to be the most important one against Turkey, where whoever wins was probably going to finish top of the group. So there was an expectation that they would be up there. There wasn't any real expectation on Australia to be successful. And what I like is for Australia as underdogs, they're sort of clipping up everything that someone's saying. Like even this call now, they might put this up and say they're very much going against us, the bulletin board material type stuff. And they're going to be a tough side to play against because essentially everyone that's here is qualified to be here. They deserve to be here, and they're good enough to be able to cause trouble. Like yesterday, we saw Cape Verde go up against Spain, who were fancied to win the whole thing, and tie the game. So who's to say that Australia can't cause an upset as such? But I still really like this US side. I like the home advantage that they have. And if everybody can remain fit and, can maintain the momentum that they have, it might not be like a 4-1 blowout again. But I still believe that in their group, they are the best side. And I'm confident that they'll be able to get the result on Friday.
I'm glad you brought up the Cape Verde and Spain scoreless draw to start the action yesterday. How much of that was a function of Spain, not really taking Cape Verde seriously?
So this is where my bias will kick in, and I will present this on the table and say to you that there aren't many players that I played with that wouldn't take a game seriously. But I think what happens is the realities of who you're playing against kick in a little bit more when the game begins, because Cape Verde themselves, in terms of African qualifying, they're a very, very dogged team, difficult team to play against. They played their own Confederations Cup, like AFCON, earlier in the year, and their defensive record was very, very good within the tournament, and they made it into the knockout rounds. So most people underestimate an opponent based upon the fact that you don't see them very often. But when you do then go toe-to-toe with them, you realize that these guys are all professional as well. They're playing for something as well. I think you saw the goalkeeper, the 40-year-old goalkeeper at the end of the game for them. He's brought to tears because this is how much it meant to him. So when you're coming up against a team of players who are desperate to get a result and you have maybe an off day, and when I say an off day, I don't mean like overall. I mean in terms of not being able to take their chances, because according to the chances, they should have won the game. And I think when people miss chances, it's not because they're not taking it seriously, it's just because they've not executed on the day. So I wouldn't level that criticism at Spain. And I think on a different day, maybe they win that game comfortably. Maybe 9 times out of 10, they win the game comfortably in the way that they played. But again, for them, it's also a reminder that this is going to be very, very difficult. But each team that you play against is subtly different. And for Spain, maybe this is a reality check that they need to go and win it all. Because if we go back 4 years, there was one Saudi Arabia that beat Lionel Messi's Argentina in the very first group game. But by the end of the tournament, it was Argentina lifting the trophy. So, never take anything for granted, but make sure that you're ready for the challenges ahead.
Plenty left to be played, obviously. But have you seen anything in these first few days of the tournament that maybe you said, all right, we got to take Japan more seriously? Has anyone sort of jumped out to you as a team that maybe belongs on your radar and wasn't in the first place?
I think for World Cups, everyone has different expectations. There'll probably be 4 or 5 teams that genuinely believe that they should be winning the whole thing. They understand how difficult it would be, but believe that they should be winning the whole thing. Then you've got teams like the US on home soil who aren't really about potential anymore. It's about the realities of how good that they are, and they're wondering how far they can go. This feels different. But then there's a sort of team caught in between those two stores, which in my mind is Germany, a team that's won the World Cup not that long ago, a team that is historically very, very good at this stage. And not many people believed that they would be in the final stages of the competition and do well. But they played against Curaçao, I think it was, and it went 1-1, and everyone was like, this is interesting. Maybe this is the Germany side that we anticipated, or one that was going to struggle. And then they won the game 7-1. I think any time you score 7 goals at a tournament, I think people need to take you a bit more seriously. And I'm not sure what their odds would be like now in terms of chances of winning it. But it's just a gentle reminder that this team that has all the history in their favour, that's been written off by so many, myself included, can really go up against anyone. And then when they're ruthless, they can score goals like this because, like I say, Spain yesterday, they couldn't score against Cape Verde. Germany scored 7 against a similar level of opposition, so maybe they're ready to go.
France-Senegal will start here in about 15 minutes, and there are a lot of people who are very high on France right now. Senegal obviously has some serious athleticism. What do you think this game's going to look like starting in a few?
So I'm very much rooting for this to be game of the tournament so far, because there's a lot of really good attacking talent in terms of skill and technique on both sides. There's a lot of athleticism, as you say, from both sides, and players who are willing to take risks and do something that's a little bit different. Whether we're talking about Michael Olise, who was Player of the Season in the German Bundesliga, you're looking at Desiree Doué, who's just won the Champions League with Paris Saint-Germain, Mbappe, who's top scorer in La Liga, or Sadio Mane, who's won the Champions League, who's won Premier League titles, who's done all this type of stuff. And I think for Senegal as well, obviously it depends on your perspective, but they are technically the team that won the AFCON final, so they were crowned the best team in Africa before, some of the litigation and stuff. So this will be a really, really good matchup because I think some of the strengths that France have, Senegal have got the ability to counter them. And as a consequence, this will be a really open game, I hope. And if it's the case, I still think France will win, but I think it could be a very high-scoring game from both sides, which is exactly what you want to do to start the day.
Nadim, have you liked the coverage so far on television here in this North American World Cup?
That is a very good question. If I'm gonna say yes and no. I'm gonna say yes and no. I think some of it feels a little bit over-commercialized as such. I think certain people that are speaking about the games, the chemistry is not necessarily always great. I think there's a real emphasis on these hydration breaks and stuff, but it feels just like a game of football is being split into 4 quarters. But maybe some of these are just the biases that I carry with me coming over to the US. And if this is the way that it's going to be, then fine. But I think there have been some players who haven't necessarily liked it. And from a viewing standpoint, like the game doesn't necessarily seem like it's the most important thing to all the broadcasters all the time, which I think, in my opinion, misses the point.
Well, I think that's why I asked the question because, again, I'm not someone who watches international football all the time. I'm not someone who watches a ton of even Major League Soccer. And when I watch a World Cup, I expect it to be the game, the form, the match itself is center staged. And, but yeah, we've got 4 quarters now, hydration breaks in climate controlled stadiums and things like that. And I want the novelty. I want it to be different than what I'm used to. And I've been surprised at how much it feels like an NFL broadcast in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And in some ways, I don't know the ins and outs of how this all came to be. And there's certain competition rules to where what happens in one game needs to happen in the other. But it does feel different. I think most people that have watched soccer throughout their life, they're looking at this tournament and saying that it feels different. And in some ways, in my opinion, probably didn't need to. But this is where we're at now. This is how they're deciding to go and try and do it. Even the emphasis on, showing celebrities in the audience and so on. That's not really like a soccer thing because most, soccer fans are about the game itself and always will be about the game itself. Whereas now I think this kind of feels like a bit more about the show and making sure you've got spaces to advertise things, which I don't know. Like I say, I'm trying not to sit on the fence. I don't really like it, but I'm not in control, and maybe this isn't for me. But the thing that's for me is the football that's going on, and so far some of the best players in the world have started to show us what they can do.
This is a very pointed RSL question. In your professional career, were you ever teammates with, did you ever have a close relationship with someone who maybe thought they would be part of a World Cup selection, thought they would have an opportunity to represent their nation, and then they were snubbed? And then, of course, after the international break, they come back, and what effect that might have.
Yeah, so are we talking about Luna? Are we talking about Gozo? Who
well,
are we talking about?
Luna, I think, more pointedly, but Gozo, you could make a case also.
I think during my time there wasn't a sense of disappointment about, say, a tournament this major, but I remember in my first season and going into the second season, Corey Baird had just been voted the Rookie of the Season for RS in MLS. And he was in and around the U.S. men's national team, and he was being considered quite heavily. And then he wasn't selected, and I remember the disappointment that he had. And for my time there, because I really liked playing with Corey, I don't think he performed to the same level again. And I don't know what the reasons would be for that, but getting that call up to the national team would have probably been a springboard. And I think there's a level of disappointment that he felt, and we felt for him as well, because I think maybe there was a competition that was coming up anyway, and we quite fancied his chances for him to be able to get in, but it never happened. I think you could maybe make the same case for Justin Glad as well, who's had spells where he's played really well. He's been around it, and then he's just fallen away a little bit. But yeah, I think for Luna, there's huge disappointment there. And one of the tough things about, say, maybe just life in general, not even soccer, is that all of a sudden everybody's moved on and the team looks really good. So it's not even a story anymore.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think that he still has a future with the US men's national side because he did well to this point. And for him to be left out is a shame, but I'm sure he's going to be supporting and hopefully being deeply, deeply motivated to get a chance in the future, and maybe he could be the difference.
Yeah, I think he's young enough that hopefully we'll see him in 4 years and 8 years and things like that. Last thing before I let you go, we're seeing the end of an era for some of the biggest stars in the game, at least from an international and a World Cup stage. At least we think so. You know, Cristiano Ronaldo's last World Cup, most likely Leo Messi's last World Cup. Knowing the impact that guys like that, those two specifically, have had on the game, and the fact that this will be the last of their 6, what is international soccer, international football like when those guys move on?
It's a great question, and one that we can't necessarily even prepare for, because for the last 2 decades we've not had to think about it. I think we saw the generation that came before them, but from when these guys have been in, they've been the 2 most important players in the whole game. I think, to give you my perspective here, so for example, when Lionel Messi moves into Miami, I promise you every corner of the globe that I've been to has featured young kids wearing Inter Miami shirts with Lionel Messi on the back. Wherever I've been to around the world, I've seen people wearing Cristiano Ronaldo Al Nassr shirts. Things that I never thought I would see, because those two go beyond any team, go beyond any league. And when I was at the last World Cup in Doha, I remember going to watch a game, a Portugal game. And as we were traveling over there were people from all parts of Asia wearing Portugal Ronaldo 7 shirts. So these two aren't just inspirations for fans. You know, they're inspirations for, say, former players like myself. Like Lionel Messi is my favorite player of all time, and he's 2 years younger than me. You know, that's a bit of a weird thing to get my head around. But yeah, they've changed the game to where the standards that were set and the bar has been raised to a point where, if you're not scoring a goal a game for 10 years, are you really that good? You know, those two have been exceptional. They've defined the game itself. And what I like is, especially with someone like Ronaldo, it's been about the professionalism as well. It's about doing the extra. And that's changed the mindset of so many people that came after them. And they leave the game, the international game in particular, in a great position, because so many have tried to be as successful as they have, not just in terms of their ability, but their sort of love of the game and the sort of dedication and work ethic required to even have a chance of being maybe half as good as they are.
I don't know if this is a very American thing or not, but we always want to know, okay, well, who's the next one then? Who's the next Michael Jordan? Who's the next LeBron James? Who's the next Tom Brady? Is there an obvious answer to who the next torchbearers are, the guys who can fill that void when Ronaldo and Messi are gone?
Yeah, so I think the next people coming through, they feel slightly different, because I think with Ronaldo and Messi, the numbers in terms of goals and assists that they were hitting, no one will probably hit those numbers again. So you have to look at, well, who's having a similar sort of impact, but without, you know, essentially having those crazy, you know, look at it twice type numbers. So you're looking at, say, someone like a Kylian Mbappe, as such at Real Madrid, you know, who are essentially the biggest football club in the whole world. You've got someone like Erling Haaland or whatever at Manchester City, who's been top scorer in the Premier League. But if we're going to talk about people who have that sort of feel like those two, it's probably Lamine Yamal for Spain, in my opinion, because the way that he plays, like he came on for that Spain game yesterday as a 19-year-old, and it felt like the weight of a nation was on his shoulders at the age of 19. But that's because this is the guy that finished second in the Ballon d'Or voting to see who was the best player last year at 19 years of age. It's a player that, you know, does things that no one else can really do. So I think he's probably going to be the next in line in terms of people to watch out for to potentially win a Ballon d'Or. But then if we're going to talk about this France game as well, Michael Olise, Desiree Doué, these are supremely talented players who play the game just that little bit differently. And speaking as a former professional, everyone that plays is good, but there are some people that make it look easy. And if you can make it look easy whilst playing against really good players, I think it shows how special you are. So I think those ones that I've named, they're young enough to be the ones who, for the next 5 to 10 years, will probably be the flag bearers for the greatest in the world, I would say.
Natum, cannot tell you how much we appreciate your time and your perspective today. Again, we're doing a service for the listeners because I cannot talk soccer, so I lean on people like you who can. And
no problem at all.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Natum Onuoha, former RSL player and obviously ESPN soccer analyst. Queen City, he was with Manchester City, and obviously finished in the MLS. He does great work. Have you noticed that about the broadcast, the World Cup broadcast, James? They are very Americanized in a way that like I maybe not all, maybe MLS fans especially are not this way. When I tune in, like I'm overseas and I tune in, I turn on like their version of SportsCenter to watch guys talk soccer. I want it to look and feel and sound different. And I think there's been a deliberate effort in this World Cup to try to Americanize it some on the studio shows and whatnot. And I'm not necessarily a fan.
Yeah, it's especially the hydration breaks from what I've seen online. And Andy Larson actually went at Alexi Lawless about this on Twitter. I don't know if you saw that yesterday. Someone asked, "Hey, wanted a former player's perspective on these hydration breaks. What do you think?" And Alexi Lawless, who has worked for Fox for a very long time and ESPN before that, right, said the most predictable thing you'd think a lead talent for the network that's broadcasting the games would say. It's not bad. It's he started to justify the fact that hydration breaks, and Andy said, "Come on." Basically said, "Come on, Alexi, like we know it. We know you're doing this for more money. Stop lying." Said other things about him too, but I think Andy is representative of a lot of soccer fans where it's like, no, this isn't soccer. The climate-controlled stadiums, mandatory hydration breaks just so you can get more commercials in. Some of the stadiums are outside, and it is hotter in this part of the world than in Europe, for example. So that's fine. But in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, you're doing hydration breaks too. Like it's a farce to get more commercial dollars. I'm not much of a fan of it either. When I do tune into soccer, I have always liked that it's the game, no commercials in the game. I can sit through 2 hours and then be done. You're not getting that with this World Cup.
All right, World Cup action fires up again here in just a couple of minutes with France and Senegal. That should be a really great match, as Natum mentioned. Also, Spence Checketts had Mark Harlan on yesterday. We are going to give you that sound after we take a double here. You definitely want to hear. It's been a while since we've had an official interview with the athletic director for Utah Athletics. Mark Harlan next on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
I feel like when the show first started, which is almost 8 years ago, Mark Harlan used to join us live in the studio a lot. Then COVID happened, and then things have changed a little bit, and it's been a number of different months. But for our YouTube viewers, you can see a very, very relaxed-looking athletic director from the University of Utah, Mark Harlan, live in studio with an Under Armour shirt for now. Right, Mark?
Got my Under Armour. Got my. This is actually one of my favorite shirts. It's kind of. I think it's from our golf team.
It looks very comfy.
They got the good stuff.
Since we're in the space, Under Armour deal about to expire, right?
Yeah, we got another full year ahead.
Okay.
So we'll be with the brand all the way through the last sporting event, which tends to be baseball. They usually end off in softball. And yeah, we've been negotiating with Under Armour for, I want to say about 4 months. You can really dive into it. And I went back there a couple times. They came out. Kevin Plank and I know each other personally really well. I was with him at South Florida, and then when I got here, obviously Utah had him. I think Kevin and I and his team and my team, we were just trying to figure out a lot of different things. We really wanted to have the ability to go to the open market this time with all the changes that are going on. 2 new coaches in our, in basketball and football, important brands for us, along with a new company that we created that I know we'll talk about here in a minute. It just felt right, and Kevin said, I get that. And we did, and we came back to Under Armour, and we just said we'd like to go in another direction. And it was tough. It was a tough call. Kevin and I have known each other for a long time, and once we got through that, he and I both agreed, let's have a great final year. Let's try to win some more championships this year. Let's get after it. So I wish them nothing but the best. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to announce our new partner maybe as soon as the end of the week or the first part of next.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's very, very exciting. We'll look forward to that. That we buried the lead because there's a lot to get to today on the show. Let's start with, since you and I last spoke, as a result of some records requests, some emails were released to the public between you and Coach Witt and his reps and his agents about how that really ultimately all kind of went down. And I had received some pieces of news here and heard some things there, nothing I felt comfortable going on air with. And obviously I want to respect you and respect Kyle. And it's safe to say that I guess the adjective I would use, the ending was somewhat uncomfortable, Mark, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say that I appreciate your thoughts on that in terms of Witt and me. I would say that the thing that's most important is that my relationship with Kyle obviously didn't end very well. We had some tough conversations, but my time with him was extraordinary. I think about the championships. I think about the stadium enhancement. I think about the ability to fund his staff at the level that I felt was at the championship level. I think at one point we were one of 3 schools that had 2 coordinators that were at $2 million. So, we really kind of rerouted a lot of our revenues to make sure that program had what they need to succeed, and real proud of all the donors and the ticket buyers that got us to that place. I think what really happened as I look back on it all is that, for a number of years, Witt wasn't sure what he wanted to do. And I always respected that, right? You have to respect a legend like that, a future college football Hall of Famer, and certainly a Utah Hall of Famer. I think this year it just kind of came down to, well, what do you want to do? And let's get some finality to it. So we talked through it. His agent is just a pro, Bruce Toner. I've known Bruce for a long time. So we all kind of talking through it. Witt wanted to come back. He had some different asks that were, not exactly what were in his contract. So we tried to figure out a 1-year solution, and we just couldn't get there. It wasn't yelling. It wasn't screaming. It was just, we just couldn't get there. And people can decide how they feel about that. Like you said, it all went public. And so, once we decided to do that, we got together on the phone and I came down to practice and, he said, let's just announce it to the team. Let's do that together. And we did. And it was an emotional team meeting. I remember it vividly. We were getting ready for the bowl. And, he said some great things to the team and kind of life went on. And then, of course, it was clear to me that he still wanted to coach. That was really clear. So I wasn't surprised that he did that. Certainly when Ward, who's a really good friend, the athletic director at Michigan, when he reached out to me, I had to smile because I thought to myself, I think probably through the years, Witt wanted a big brand like that. I mean, that's just me thinking. I don't want to put words in his mouth. So I really smiled and I thought, well, that's awesome for him. I mean, it really is. I mean, he still wanted to coach. And so, we talked through it again, how we're going to do the bowl game. He asked if he could come out with the team and talk to the team? I said, absolutely. So he came out and gave a awesome talk in Vegas and turned it over to Morgan. And it was great. And then, we've been off and running ever since. And obviously that stuff has to go public. You wish some things with personnel can't, but that's when you're at the flagship and proud of being at the flagship, those things get public.
When did the Michigan AD reach out to you during the process? When did that phone call take place?
Well, I think there was two different outreaches. There was an outreach from the gentleman that was handling the search, which I can't remember how many days after he met with the team, but I'd heard from him first.
Okay.
He said, I wanted to let you know, and I think his direct words, there's a 4% chance that coach. I said, well, 4%, where are you coming up with that?
Very exact.
So, I think it was his way of saying, don't worry about it. Well, I wasn't worried, right? We had our conversations, but I thought, hey, that would be really interesting. And then I think Ward Manuel called me about, let's see, December 26th is when he let me know what was taking the job. So I would say it's probably like the 22nd or
okay.
So I had some knowledge that conversations were ongoing.
So the email you received from Witt's agent asking, again, I think most of us for the past few years have operated off the premise like this is probably it for him. It's the number one topic we get into on the show. So I would imagine the email you received that, no, he's not stepping down, and oh, by the way, he wants an extension, and oh, by the way, he wants a raise. Safe to say, did that catch you off guard? Were you surprised to get that?
Well, first of all, he did not ask for an extension. He didn't really. I don't recall asking for more years. He just wanted compensation levels different what his current contract, was at, and so that's what we had to talk through. We had to talk through what it would kind of look like to truly set up Coach Scally. If Witt was going to come back for that year, and we just went back and forth, and we agreed to a lot of it. We just couldn't agree to all of it, and that's when we just kind of came together and said, well, that's just not going to work. Yeah.
So the last thing, then we'll move on here. The counter offer for the 1 year, where essentially Morgan is heavily involved, if not the guy that's making the final call, and a rep from the athletic department would exist in the football building. I read that as like you had to believe that there was no way Kyle was going to agree to those things.
Well,
right?
That if you read it just on its face, I can see why that looked heavy-handed. It really wasn't intended to be. We were actually, now with the rev share and all of the things that are going down and trying to negotiate with agents, that was really the intent of that, to move our people that handle all that stuff down there. That's really what that intent was. We're even looking at doing that with Morgan right now, talking through all that. So. But I see how that came off publicly that way, but it really wasn't the intention. I think the intention was to get Coach Scally heavily involved in the selection of players and the process for the team that will be built during this final year.
Yeah. And as I told Paul, I mean, the way I've covered it on the show, and I know you know because you listen for 4 hours every day, Mark, which I appreciate. I'm happy for Kyle, and I'll be cheering for him in Ann Arbor, but I believe it's Morgan's time.
Well, it is Morgan's time, whatever we believe. And I also want to tell you, I'm happy for Kyle. And I'm as I told Ward, I think he's going to go out there and do a terrific job.
Yeah.
He's done amazing work. They needed somebody with high integrity in that role. That was made very clear to me in my conversations with folks there. And that's what they got. High integrity, incredible family man. And Michigan has that certain toughness that I think Utah carries too. Or they want it back.
Yeah.
So if you look at it from that standpoint, I think they got the right guy.
So as far as what you've seen so far, Morgan sliding over one seat, he had a few of us up to the football facility for a meeting, which was really cool. He's joined the show and he's joined the podcast, and I've known him. We were in school together at the U. So I feel like I know him well, and I feel like I have a good pulse on the type of person he is and the leader that he is. But since that transition took place, what have you noticed from your new head coach?
Well, it started off right when we got to Vegas, just watching him at practice. You would have thought he'd been the head coach for years. The way that the practices were run during that week, the way that, they prepared, the focus of the players, the assistant coaches, everybody just really fell. I mean, frankly, this was the first bowl game we've won in 8 years, right? So it was a game we really wanted to have against a good opponent. So you see it there, and then, of course, you get back to campus and you watch how he had to handle the changes, right? Some coaches left. We didn't think some would. We figured some might. Some of the players, right, that we had even in a case of one on campus. So it was a tough time, but it was never panic. It was different routes that he had already imagined would happen and was just going to go on the route that he had already, thought about. I thought the hires he made were really, really good, and we've seen that. And if you go forward, you just watch now. We're in the middle of June recruiting. It's the heaviest recruiting month of the year for college football, and it's been spectacular how they've established those weekends. The way he communicates with donors and everything, it's been fantastic. And we're going to really lean into Morgan, to help him in all ways possible. And in turn, he'll also help with the efforts we have to generate revenue, which is very important.
Yeah, and we're going to get to the Otro deal now that it's done. But since you just mentioned it, Celesi Moa was on campus, was enrolled in classes. I mean, you had sent out a social media post that you did end up taking down. What happened there? Can you shed any light on that?
Well, for me, obviously, it was taken down because I saw the reaction to it, and I don't want to do that. That's inappropriate. So I'll take ownership of that. I just felt like for me, maybe it's a little bit, in some cases, like where's the floor in everything we're doing? You have a young man who's on campus, and then he's gone. He's been a part of our orientation, and I'm not coming down on him. It's the rules. It's allowed. And, it just gets back to where we are as an industry. Can you imagine in the NFL, someone starting off in training camp and being there for a week and a half and then just being gone? Where do you go, outside of two organizations working on a trade? So, it is what it is. I wish him the best, too, because he's a great young man, too. But what Morgan really figured out in this whole process is there's really one or two ways you can do this. You can get really angry about it, or you can just go to work and find the best students and coaches that want to be here.
Yeah, and look, when I found out that it was Michigan, I wondered aloud on the show, who's going with them? And I was asked on television, who do you think goes with Kyle? And I said, whoever he wants, because that's the nature of the job. Were you surprised at the number of coaches and players that ended up following Kyle Tann-Arbor?
No, and there's others that I think would argue your premise, right? That really love being here, and they know what we have here, and they know we have a chance to do great things as we've done in the past. I don't think anything really surprises me anymore. Mm-hmm. I know Michigan's a big brand, so any of those guys that win, I understood. Yeah, without question.
So speaking of rules, I don't even know where we're at with some of this stuff as far as being able to enforce it. I know the NCAA has been thrown out of court and called a serial antitrust violator and told to go figure it out, and then their ability to enforce rules is taken away from them. But if there's one thing I think anybody who has been in the ecosystem of sport or follows it or covers it has always been under the impression like you cannot bet on this stuff. If you are a player and you are a coach, you cannot bet on the games that you're involved in. And I don't care if Brendan Sorsby didn't play in the Indiana games he bet on. He was in coaches' meetings. He was in player meetings, thousands of bets, nearly $100,000. He goes and gets the Michael Jordan of attorneys and Jeffrey Kessler. They find the judge to give him the injunction. I just want to give you the space, man. Where are you at with this crazy story?
Well, obviously I had a comment last week, that when I found out about it on Monday morning, it was defeating in a lot of different ways because like this is a tenet that I never thought, and I still don't believe it will. Never thought it would cross. I mean, I went to go meet the football staff this morning and I actually walked through the locker room and don't bet on it is right there. You will lose it's a poster that it's always been there. Now we know a lot of things are changing, but the actual integrity of in between the lines has been something I think everybody understands that's a line we can't cross. I can't really say a lot about it because obviously the legal action is really starting to heat up, as we know. I appreciated Governor Cox and his Attorney General today putting out some information about their support, as other states in our league, against some of the action that the Texas Attorney General. But I can't really go too far down the road except to say I do think that, I guess for once, it's nice to see everybody rally about a common cause. And I do think that there will be a solution of some type. It's just going to take us a bit to get there.
So the reports are the Big 12 held a conference call with all of the athletic directors besides Kirby Hoka, the athletic director from Texas Tech. Can you shed any light? Give us some insight on what that call is?
Kirby was there.
Oh, he was on the call.
Yeah, Kirby was there. Let me also say that I got to really give a shout out to Commissioner Yormark. Mm-hmm. He has been unbelievable, relentless in communicating with us, communicating with the board. He is really leaning in. I mean, he is very passionate. Obviously, he's worked in the NBA. They've had some scandals there, and And so he's got a very strong feeling that he's voiced publicly about this. He got us all together just to talk, right? We were on a Zoom because we're scattered all over. And I think many of us, just kind of explained what we felt about it. It was very professional. Kirby was very professional. He understood and he, we appreciated the time to let him know what we feel. And he gave us a little bit of his thoughts. So, we understand now it's a week later. I think that was last Tuesday was that Zoom. And as I mentioned, some legal things are starting to trickle out, and we'll see where it all goes.
Last thing here before we move on from it, Georgia, Nebraska, they're not scheduling Tech in anything. That's been made clear to all of their teams, administrators, and such. We hear rumors of a Big 12 boycott, of schools not willing to play them anymore. Any meat on that bone with Utah? Have you considered that course of action?
I think we're just going to follow the commissioner's lead on this and look to our peers in this conference to figure out a solution. And I'm sure there's a wide variety of what Brett and the board could come up with. But at this time, we just don't know what that'll be.
Okay. You've referenced generating revenue a few times during our conversation, a part of a front-facing, revenue-generating entertainment business. I'm a grown-up. I know where this stuff is, okay? Sometimes we can get lost in our moral compass being compromised. I know you got to make money, and I know you need money to keep up with the oil money Texas Tech has, or the cookie bro money BYU has, or whatever else they're doing down there. And look, I think it's probably safe to say if you had a very affluent alumni base that was willing to write checks the way some other schools have at their disposal, private equity would not be a necessity. But that's the route you guys have chosen to take. The Otro Capital deal is now signed. Mark, tell us where you're at with it right now.
Well, we were proud to get that signed last Thursday, I believe it was. It's been a 3-year journey, Spence. It's been, a lot of introspection and looking at the landscape as best as we could to predict and, where things were going. But I think we probably 2 years ago or so figured out that, with the payroll for players going to be around 20.5 and growing exponentially from there, that we needed to do things different. We have a sold-out football stadium. We have a great corporate program. We have great donors, but it wasn't going to be enough to offset the operating cost of the organization. So we talked to a lot of different companies. We didn't have any interest in private equity per se, just giving us money and seeing what we could do. But we were interested in folks that maybe had a type of a situation where we could have operators come in and really assist us. So when you fast forward, we've created a new company, Crimson Brand Partners, CBP. So all our revenue generators will go in there, outside philanthropy. That'll stay with the athletic department. We're bringing in Matt Webb, a very accomplished young man, to be the president. And, I'm sure everyone saw the release. He's the, former very high up at the Saints and the Pelicans. And he's, populating a vice presidential team that's really, really impressive. From baseball to NFL and certainly others that have been in college. Moving over with them is a lot of my really solid revenue producers as well. So the company will be about 60 people when it's all said and done. So a big part of this was, well, from the get-go, we just want to get better, right? We brought in Patrick Nolan. He's the CRO from Notre Dame. He got here, he's here for 8 months. The first thing he tried to do is try to get all these different units that are around campus, not just athletics, who are part of putting on football and basketball, get us together. We're kind of in different directions. They did a study, which the Tribune got their hands on. Not sure how they did that, but it's okay. And it showed that there was confusion. There wasn't really a lot of alignment. So, it's what we had been sensing for a while. We really needed to come together on one roof, get our North Star, taking care of our customers, generating revenue, that we can, be champions in the classroom and on the field going forward. So where we stand today is that group is starting to arrive. We're looking forward to them all getting here. We've got a lot of work to do ahead, and I'm excited about where things off. Last thing I'll say is all through the negotiations, we were very clear from a governance standpoint. The Crimson Brand Partners has nothing to do with any decisions we make on coaching or recruiting. They will be handling the payroll for the student athletes, but that just comes to us, and then our GMs, myself, coaches, we decide how it's distributed. So they don't have anything to do with that, but they are going to combine all of the assets, commercial assets at the university, not just athletics, all the concerts. They'll be running stadium. They'll be doing all the things, none of which athletics has had before, and come together as one. So I'm really excited to see how it all plays out.
So you referenced the study that the Tribune did get their hands on. one of the quotes was, quote, "We solve problems, but we never fix systems. Leadership wants excellence, but there's no infrastructure to get us there." And then some other comments about tickets given out, revenue being left on the table. First of all, this is why you do these studies, to identify where you need to improve. But tell me how you digested the study and what you're going to do to maybe try to improve in those areas.
Well, I mean, I told Patrick I thought it was great. I mean, I wanted him to know and remember, we not only had athletic department, but we had other revenue units. And you could see there's some general disappointment. And the leaders of those different units, some of them were new and some of them were just trying to figure some things out. The ticket part was interesting because, they didn't get into the football tickets, but they looked at arena tickets. Mm-hmm. And we have had some back and forth about gymnastics, how much should be free and how much shouldn't be free. So I think those people were probably more referring to gymnastics, and we'll continue to look at all that stuff. But listen, I saw the report. I said, that's how you got, you got to get better. If you don't look introspectively at what you're doing, then, I don't know what you are doing. Right. And so I was proud that Patrick did the study. I felt bad for him that someone betrayed it and turned it over. It is what it is. But the good news is a lot of those folks are now going to be in the new company, or they'll be back with us in fundraising.
And that's where I wanted to go next. Of course, the news was released a few weeks ago that I don't know how many employees were, I don't know if you want to say laid off, fired, terminated, or whatever the private equity term is for those decisions. And then I've been told now by you on air and others off air that the hope is the majority of them, if not maybe all of them, will get their jobs back. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, this again had nothing to do with private equity in terms of OTRO. This had to do with the fact that the jobs that are currently at the athletic department are being moved over to Crimson Brands Partners, so they no longer. So that's a stateside. They call it RIF, which is a position elimination. So those folks then interview because they got to fit into what Matt's trying to build, right? And we've already seen some that are going over and some are interviewing. Of 190, something like that, people we have, I'm not going to minimize anything because every person is important. You're talking about 14 to 16 people in the revenue-generating jobs. And I do hope that most of them will make it, and some that don't will help them land someplace else. But it is part of the process. And, the one thing we're not first at, we're first at bringing in private capital and creating this asset now that is coming out of our revenues that we can, do a lot of things with in the future. But a lot of universities, I think we're over 20 to 25, have created these new companies. And the same thing happens. You have to move those folks over. Some make it, some don't.
The state auditor released her letter, and I can see the look on your face, Mark. I'm just asking you about the news is all.
Yeah.
Of course, her concerns about whether or not this is something that we should be doing with a publicly owned institution. Just your reaction to that?
Well, we've worked with the state auditor's office for years in athletics. They've conducted our audit, I think, for the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. So we have great partnership. I think that's her job, right? This is a public thing, and she's looking into it. We've had a lot of offline conversations between the university, our folks that are doing all the hard and dirty work on this deal, and those conversations will continue and be ongoing. But we're not going to do anything that's outside of the state purview. We had long conversations with governmental leaders through this whole process, and we will continue to do so.
So I have several people in my life, family members, friends in private equity. Okay. As I've said a million times, not all private equity is created equal, but whenever people hear private equity, their initial reaction, I think, is fear. What is this going to mean for my consumer experience? What is this going to mean as a Ute fan that has had season tickets for 40 years or saves up to go to 2 or 3 games a year? First order of business when the revenue is received, Mark, can you shed some light on where the money is going to go? Are there plans to change, I'll say improve the consumer experience, but therefore make the consumer experience more expensive for patrons that go to the game? Can you kind of walk us through that dynamic?
I think that's, first of all, I totally agree. I mean, you say private equity and folks there's just a gag reflex. And I joke with that with the guys at OTRO and the team there. So really our job is to continue to educate, especially when they get here. I want them to do some town halls. I want them to be very available. I don't want them to be some group that's hiding behind a wall. Again, big part of this was trying to figure out revenue solutions for us going forward. Sure. We're leaving things on the table. We're not on the same page. You had a corporate sales group on campus. You had an athletic sales group. We were running into each other. You can't have it. So a lot of this is just getting organized to a way. Now, tickets have been raised every year. We've had a tremendous amount of football success. So we're always going to see some of that, but we also want to make sure that we're adding more back to the experience. They have some CapEx responsibilities that we're going to work on. We're going to look at the basketball arena. They're going to lean in and help us a little bit, but that's out for right now. But the football, I think, right now is just trying to find out what things can we do that we don't currently have. Is there some bunker suites that we can create down there, like our friends down at the Jazz did, which a lot of our donors, a few of them have those. They talk about that experience. We saw in the Big 12 this last year a lot of field suites. We're looking at that in the north, just to create something low that, we don't block people's view, but just things like that. Concessions is a big part. They're going to oversee concessions too. We've got a lot of quality, I think, that we can improve there. So that's what we're trying to do. I know the initial reaction is, well, everything's going to cost more. Well, I can't say it's not going to cost more, but what we want to do is make sure that we have more people on the process. We're going to almost double our size of people that work on these things, and they're all going to report to one person. I'm the chair of that board, so we'll work very closely together in my team, and we'll just see if we can't provide a better experience. That's a big part of it. I mean, listen, going to Huntsman is hard right now, right? Alex and Wes and that group are going to do everything they can, but I think we saw some improvements on things that we did, but we need to get a lot better for people's experience in there going forward. These guys can help with that.
For sure. And, again, to be very reductive and basic about a private equity investment, they find an asset that they believe in, an asset that they believe can at some point pay dividends, sometimes a distressed asset that they infuse capital in, make some personnel changes, change some things here or there. And then at the end of the day, expect to make money off their original investment. It's not that complicated. So as far as, kind of seeing around corners, which is what leaders have to do, and you look at 5 to 7 years down the road when the expected return is going to be asked for, is it open rights media deal? Is it all the improvements we're talking about to generate more revenue? Is it a Big Ten invite at some point?
Well, as far as the exit and everything, everything you're saying, I'm not going to argue with, right? I mean, these guys aren't coming in here to lose money, and they're certainly not coming to keep it flat. Otherwise, they spent 3 years negotiating with us. We just, in all our modeling, and I've never modeled anything this as much in my life with all the people that we work with, I'll just tell you that we believe the lift will be such that we will far exceed what we could have on our own, right? Especially since, to your point, we had modeled deficits, right, especially when payroll started, that we believe we can not only get back to, getting back to carrying reserves, but we can also get to a place where we're flourishing. You avoid me going in and knocking on President Randall's office, begging for things that really are probably better spent in other parts of campus. We did not want to touch student fees. I mean, there's a host of reasons why we went into this. And if it's a good deal, both parties win. We have government rights, we have board majority. We'll be able to handle any nefarious actors, which I don't think at all are here. So we feel like we've covered a lot of our bases, but now it's time to get after it.
Last thing before I set you loose, I reference kind of tongue-in-cheek the Big Ten. I'll ask you another question that's impossible to know, but, as a guy that's in the ecosystem, I'm certainly interested in your thoughts. What does college football look like in 5 to 7 years?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? And I wish I had a better feel for what the federal government's going to do over the next 60 days. We keep hearing these different things. Obviously, the markup at the Senate bill is Thursday. Will it get through, and what adjustments will it have in the House? And if this doesn't happen, then it's done, right? We are what we are until we can figure out a way to manage all these different state attorney generals and these certain judges. So it's difficult to predict. Where I come on this is my job, Taylor Randall's job, our donors, our board, is we have to kick ass in this league. We haven't gotten to the championship in football yet. We are performing slightly under overall than what we did coming in to the league over the last 2 years. I think our second last year and our last year we went out 12 or something league champions. So we have come into the league and it's like, okay, right? I think in this third year, coaches are starting to figure out, I'm trying to figure it out. We've come a long way in understanding travel. I am so focused on right now. I just want to make sure whatever happens, we're there. I'm very convinced we will be, but I want to make sure that, let's not talk too far about all this stuff when my job is to make sure we're as good as we possibly can be.
And with that in mind, I will let you leave after this, though. I think football fans, hardcore football fans, that's really their deal. They see $500 million in capital and say, we're going to go buy a quarterback. The reality is again, Texas Tech, BYU, in your league, the two big spenders, and then throughout the landscape of college football, we could go over the Ohio States and the Michigans and everybody else. Is this capital infusion something that will help you keep up with your peers concerning NIL?
I think what we've done, even regardless of that, over the last 13, 14 months, has been pretty extraordinary. It's just you get labeled as not having enough. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just challenge people to look at our football players that we have retained over the last few years. I mean, we retained 2 quarterbacks. Those guys are great, but you know what? They're getting paid too.
Yep.
And, we're doing it by the board. I know it frustrates some of our folks, our hardcore folks, but that's just the way this university is. That's the way the trustees and the president and I are going to run it. We're going to turn in our NIL deals. If they're not right, we'll fix them and do them again. It's not a capital problem that we're having when it comes to player compensation. We've been able to retain a lot, and Alex and Wes have had a lot more to play with this last year because of different systems that we're learning. And I think these guys will come in and they'll help with all that. They're going to be a big part of helping us with NIL too. You better believe it. And as far as the upfront capital, that's for the president and I and the trustees to figure out what's the best way to move forward. We don't want to do anything but make the Utes better. And the thing I'm most excited about is how our annual revenues can go up. That's really my focus. We'll figure out what we're going to do with all that at the right time.
Great stuff from Spence Checketts and a conversation with Mark Harlan yesterday. We'll unpack a little bit of it. We're going to give away some tickets to Lagoon as we close out the show coming up in a little more than 20 minutes. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. The truck with the duck handles all of your home maintenance needs. That air conditioner on the fritz, valleyplumbing.com. Make an appointment. You don't even have to pick up the phone. Little drain cleaning needed. Maybe you're just wondering why your water bill is so high. There might be a leak you haven't detected. Give them a call at Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. They'll take care of you. France-Senegal is tied up at 0 for now. 0-0, as they say in the business. About 5 minutes before the end of the first half at this point. I thought Spence did a really great job with the Mark Harlan conversation yesterday that we just played for you. I wanted – it's up on our website. Thank you, James, at ESPN700sports.com. I wanted that last question. I wanted the clear answer. I wanted just a, yes, we can use this money to buy players. And I know that Mark Harlan, there's a political element to how you have to talk, right? And he's giving praise, deserved praise, to the retention that Utah did, particularly with Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin and Kelvin Obot and some of these guys, right? But the number one burning question on the minds of Utah football fans is, will Otro Capital's infusion of cash translate to better players on the field for the Utes? That's the whole thing. I need that clear answer. I need like a definitive yes. Otherwise, as this private equity thing continues, we're just going to be looking at increased ticket costs for Utah fans. And I guess we'll wait till the financial reports come out in a year. I don't know. Feels unclear still, despite Spence's best efforts.
And with all this, I say this with as much respect as you were saying at OC. When you're the athletic director at any university, but I think particularly at a public university like Mark Harlan is, there are some times when you don't feel like you can answer things totally directly. And I totally respect that, get it, that's fine. It did feel like he kind of avoided the question, though. Like, just and decided instead of answering the question, and I don't think this is a bad way of not answering the question, reminding people that, hey, we actually did a really good job of retaining people.
That's great, but it also defers attention from the fact, like, there needs to be an acknowledgement. I know there is from the coaching staff. A continual acknowledgement that we need to do better in these areas. And if this is a solution, tell us. If this is a potential solution, tell us. We all know that Utah needs to do better in NIL. The $21 to $25 million max out that Utah is going to be able to give players. That's revenue share and NIL combined from every source that I've heard is not enough to consistently, without overachieving, compete with teams that frankly have higher salary caps than you. That's the whole thing here. And I hate that's what it is now, right? Part of what made Utah such a great program for so long and why so many people from like the Cougar Board and the Matador Club are just like, we're better than you. No, you're not. Your coaches aren't better. Your players are just higher paid. And some of them don't even perform like it. Right? Your return on investment is lower at this point. Anyway, I love the interview. I love the insight. I appreciate that Mark Harlan took time out of the busy schedule to come on. I don't want to sound like I'm just crapping on it. That was just the only thing I needed to hear answered that wasn't answered in that whole conversation.
Yeah, I'll say this. Spence did not give him any softballs. Spence asked him to account for for all the things that has broke news from the Utah Athletic Department since the beginning of the year, basically, since Witt left to take the Michigan job, right? And Mark Harlan, I don't think he dodged any of the questions. I think that he just answered that last one a little more indirectly than we would have liked, OC. But besides that, I really applaud him for being as open as he was and being willing to kind of be grilled a little bit by Spence Checketts, and great job by Spence for asking the hard questions.
No, it was awesome. I mean, that's the conversation that people want to hear. You only hear it right here on the home of the Utes, and you can find it on the ESPN 700 app and on ESPN700sports.com. All right, we have Lagoon passes to give away. We will do that and do some crosstalk with Spence, who is, of course, the man who conducted that interview with Mark Harlan. That's coming. We'll close it out on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. 877-353-0700. Father's Day Lagoon passes. I've got a 4-pack for you. Hopefully you were listening earlier when we talked to Gordy Chiesa. We were discussing Jalen Brunson, NBA Finals MVP, and Gordy gave us a really interesting tidbit. The very first NBA Finals MVP award was handed out to what legend? Also happened to be the last time that the award was given to a player from the losing team in the NBA Finals. We've seen that in hockey a few times. But in the NBA, it's always been the best player on the winning team that's gotten the NBA Finals, except for that first year. Who did they hand it out to? 877-353-0700. Dads deserve a day at Lagoon. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Give you chance every day this week to win a 4-pack of passes at Lagoon. It's where fun is, you know. Is that still their slogan in Lagoon? Crosstalk, the final segment of the show, brought to you today and every day by our friends at Advanced Window Products. 801-850-9100. Lifetime warranty on windows that are made, measured, manufactured specifically for your home right here in the state of Utah, right here in Salt Lake City. You can go down to the factory just on the west side of I-15. You can see the process. They pay so much attention to the small details. It's a clean operation. It's an efficient operation, and it's one that will take care of you for the life of your home. You put those windows in, and yes, it's going to be somewhat of an expense. They've got payment plans to help out with that, but you get that money back and more on a resale value. You get that money back and more on energy efficiency returns in your home. Saving on energy costs, depending on how many windows you're putting in, you might actually offset the cost of your monthly payment on your energy bill. 801-850-9100, $2,500 off, 10 windows or more. Some stuff we didn't touch on in the Daily Dump, by the way. Venus and Serena Williams are teaming back up for Wimbledon. Little doubles sister action. I'm particularly excited about this because that means I might get to watch them. Venus and Serena teaming up together during Wimbledon. I'm going to Wimbledon this year.
How's bragging camp going, OC?
I'm getting pretty good at it.
You're getting pretty good at it. No, that's I'm insanely jealous. That's my favorite tennis Grand Slam. I think it's a lot of people's favorite. It's on the bucket list to make it to the All England Club. So that's cool. And yeah, this unexpected coming out of retirement for Serena makes it even more exciting for people like you who get to be there in person.
They have won the Wimbledon title 6 times as a pair. Now, they're 44 and 45 years old. They're not exactly favorites here. They've won the singles titles 12 times between the two of them. Serena won it 7 times. Venus won it 5 times. You know how annoying it has to be Venus Williams? You win Wimbledon 5 times, and your little sister is just like, wow, without me, you would be the best female tennis player in the history of the sport. But I'm just a little bit better than you. That's got to be the most aggravating thing at every family dinner.
It's the reverse, but it reminds me of one of my favorite parts of Winning Time, the Reggie Miller versus New York Knicks 30 for 30, when Reggie says, I scored 50 in a high school game. I'm getting in the car. I'm feeling really good. And everyone's like smirking at me. And I'm like, what? And they're like, Cheryl scored 110. It's just like, he's like, you just can't win. But it's reversed because Cheryl's the older sibling in that case. But
okay,
yeah,
so
you love that.
So I'm going to be at the All England Club. This is exciting. Okay, I'm going to be at the All England Club on July 2nd. That is the singles second round and doubles first round. There's a good chance that I wander over to whatever court Venus and Serena are playing on. and be like, "Don't you know who I am? Let me in." Only to have whoever's working there say, "Sir, get away from us." All right, the Drive with Spence Checketts is coming up next. Spence is here in studio as we wrap up the Sean O'Connell Show.
You're going to Wimbledon?
Yeah.
Such a snob, dude.
I know.
Man of the people on this side over here.
I cannot wait. I'm going to wear a linen shirt and everything.
Are you flying the Delta One layback seats?
No, actually taking a private jet this time.
See, yeah, okay. Yeah, that tracks. That tracks. So the rest of us will just be here working hard while you're over in London town.
Yes, having strawberries and cream.
Have you ever? I've not been. Is this your first Wimbledon experience?
It is my first Wimbledon experience. I'm very much looking forward to it. My wife got to go last year with her family, and the guy who is like the family hookup for tickets was just like, "Oh man, well, the sports guy didn't even get to come. We had a PFL event last year." And he's like, "The sports guy didn't get to come." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It would have been so great."
Well,
so then this year he's like, "We got to get you to come."
Yeah.
So just incredible generosity from someone who's way cooler than me. I'm lucky enough to go.
you have a excuse me. You have a hookup for Wimbledon tickets?
Well, just this year, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it must be.
You gotta
nice.
know a guy.
Yeah, it's just must be nice. I don't know how the other half lives.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry, Spence.
yeah, over here in the seersuckers head to toe outfit.
Yeah.
So
Great job with the Mark Harlan interview yesterday.
thank you.
That
Yeah.
was awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Surprised that he said we're going to hear an announcement on the apparel deal in the next week or so.
That's great.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, it's Adidas, but
Is it really?
yeah,
Okay.
gonna
All
be
right.
Adidas.
Okay. I was pulling for the swoosh.
Not happening.
Okay.
And actually, it's funny because like some of the guys, like Tommy Hackenbrook of all people, took to Twitter. It was just like, we had a Nike deal and it sucked.
Oh, really?
And Utah. So this happens when you're a Nike school, but you're not one of the cool Nike schools.
Uh-huh.
When Nike hasn't put you on a pedestal.
Yeah, that's true.
They give you like old stuff, bad stuff, less variety, and you want to be a featured. And Utah was for a time with Under Armour. You got treated well. So look, the only reason why Nike would be, in my opinion, significantly better for Utah is because you generate a lot of revenue based off of what people are buying in the bookstore, right? And the Nike stuff is just going to be cooler. But I'll wear it as long as we maintain drum and feather dominance. I'll wear Adidas.
Yeah,
I like Adidas shoes a lot better than Adidas cleats are, in my opinion, the best cleats.
That's what I was going to ask you, because when it comes to basketball shoes, it's Nike and everybody else. But Nike cleats aren't as good as the Adidas cleats.
In my opinion.
Okay, interesting.
And
All right.
and the Under Armour cleats are abysmally bad. And so that's a huge upgrade, and for players, that's what matters most.
Yeah, I was surprised that we were going to learn that this week, but I guess you just told us what it is today, so we don't have to wait.
Well, I don't mean to spoil anyone's party, but it's the worst kept secret in the business.
Hashtag sources, Sean.
Hashtag sources.
I mean, you're the guy that told us Alex Jensen was getting hired as the head coach of Utah basketball.
Let's see if I get chastised for the chastised for that and out
You
the
probably
Adidas
will.
thing the same way I got. Hey, we're not there yet.
Like,
okay.
well, you kind of are.
You were though.
And I did appreciate Mark's willingness. He gave me a couple side eyes with questions a couple of times. I could tell he wasn't thrilled with certain.
Well, I'm glad you
questions.
asked those questions anyway.
But I appreciated him taking the time.
It was awesome.
Because to Mark's credit, he walked in and said, "You can ask me whatever you want, and I'll give you as much time as you need."
And I thought he handled even the questions he probably didn't want to talk about.
Yeah.
I thought he handled it great.
No, I appreciate
for the most
it.
part.
Yeah.
You asked the best question last, and I needed to know the direct answer on it, and he was able to masterfully skate around it to some degree.
Which one?
The one, hey, all the football people want to know, does this mean you can go out and buy a quarterback?
Yeah.
And he did a great job of giving praise that it was very much due to the coaching staff, to the people in the personnel department who maintained and retained excellent talent and good NIL deals for the guys that you value on this roster already.
Yeah.
But the name of the game and the most important thing here, as you're well aware, with an infusion of capital or a new plan to bring in extra revenue or whatever, is how does that translate to player personnel?
Mm-hmm.
That is the biggest question. And I think it will, because now the funds that Ocho Capital is bringing in will replace what may have been, donor stuff or revenue stuff in the past.
Well, yes, correct. And the other thing that I really took away from that is that this partnership with Otro Capital isn't only about infusing economic support into the program right away. It's also bringing on 3 operators.
Yes.
3 employees who have experience in the pro sports landscape that are going to utilize the study that Mark was thrilled the Salt Lake Tribune got their hands on to put things on the table to generate more revenue that have kind of been lost in the shuffle.
Sure.
And I did appreciate Mark's candor in discussing the comments that were made about, we solve problems, but we don't put systems into place. Sometimes we're not sure what the leadership is doing. And the leader's sitting here in the studio willing to say we need to get better. So it's one thing to have cash infused to your program. It's another thing to put things in place to continue to generate more revenue. Because until the media rights go back to market or whatever that looks like in 2030, 2031, it became very clear during that interview, as he said, generate more revenue maybe 7 times, that until then, they do have to come up with creative ways to make more money. And he also admitted that the consumer experience is going to be more expensive. Now, tickets are raised every year.
Yeah.
And that's not just Utah football. I mean, the Jazz have raised their tickets every single year. That's how this works. Even if you're not good, they're going to raise ticket prices. But he talked about concessions. He said bunker suites. Okay, he said that out loud, bunker suites. Talked about the north end zone, right? So that sounds like, I don't know if they're going to be able to do it this year. I mean, it's already mid-June, so probably not. But at some point, Rice-Eccles Stadium is going to receive a facelift, and as a result, you are going to be asked to pay more money for your experience.
You know what's going to be cool, though? When that, I can't remember the name of the campus drive or whatever that goes to the north of the north end zone between the field house and the
bookstore there?
In the bookstore.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When that's a tunnel, because now the north end zone stands go up over the road and onto the roof. That's going to be cool looking.
I have a feeling you're taking some creative liberties here.
That's going to happen.
That's going to happen.
Yeah. Because how else are you going to expand capacity in the north end zone?
Okay, so I didn't take that as an expansion. I took that as creating bunker suites like right behind the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not an architect, so maybe you're right. Maybe it's a tunnel.
So you're going to sacrifice north end zone seats? That is the exact group of people in the fan base you do not want to upset. The north end zone fans. That is a demographic. The north end zone fan. They are the ones that will show up at your office if you get rid of their seats.
You are talking to a former season ticket holder in the north end zone for 6 years.
Exactly.
I know you don't relate because you're going to Wimbledon and stuff, but that's where I sat with my son for 6 years.
I'll be in the bunker suites. Thank you.
I don't know that they're eliminating seats. I think they
how could you add a bunker suite without eliminating what's already there?
Well, I don't know.
Unless you expand up over the road.
Well, I don't know how many bunker suites you could. Look, I have zero clue. I've not seen the renderings. But he did say north end zone bunker suites. So I think we should prepare for that to look different. And maybe they do expand it all the way to the bookstore where it's a tunnel, because that would look pretty cool.
Not to the bookstore.
Why? Sorry for dreaming big over here. I'm an idea man.
You know the roof that says Utah on it right now?
Yeah.
Shout out Keith Van Horn for helping raise those funds. That's going to be obscured by an expanded grandstand. And you might as well tunnel it out. Let's go.
So you think they should expand Rice-Eccles Stadium?
I think that you have to add more seats there in the north end zone.
To add bunker suites. Yeah, well, neither of us are architects, so I guess we'll have to see what happens.
Maybe I'm not.
Adidas, huh? Now, they do an excellent job with soccer gear.
They do a great job with football gear. They just have had
better than Under Armour.
Which is really the key here.
It's been a long time since I walked into like the bookstore or a Utah Ute Zone, whatever store, Red Zone, whatever store, and been like, yep, I need that sweatshirt. And I'd like to sport more Utah gear. It just, if we're honest, BYU has kind of lapped Utah when it comes to the gear, because they're, of course, they're a Nike school that I think is valued, right? I mean, that partnership means a lot to Nike. So we need to improve Utah's gear. And that's one way that you can find another revenue stream.
Arizona State, Indiana, Kansas, Louisville, Miami, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Texas Tech Washington.
Okay.
Go look at what you see from them.
Washington's got some good gear.
And that's what, hopefully you can get out of if I should – reports are that it'll be Adidas. And if I'm right, Adidas would be or Utah would be on that Adidas list.
I'm trying to think if Miami's gear is cool or if I'm nostalgic because they were awesome in the 90s. I think Louisville does a pretty good job. That's a good list. That's a good list of schools to be on. I don't mind that at all.
Wow. Adidas must have loved that they had two teams representing in the national championship game last year.
Yeah, that Indiana investment turned out.
Wow.
Give me a Brendan Sorsby hot take before you get out of here.
I don't know if I have a hot take. Here's what happened. Brendan Sorsby and everyone around him realized that they were not going to be able to win this battle.
Yeah.
And for once, reason prevailed in college football. When is the last time the reasonable outcome is the one that we got in college sports?
I want to know what Jeffrey Kessler's billable hours were for this entire endeavor.
It's probably why Cody Campbell and Texas Tech was like, we're not going to try to get any of the NIL money we've already paid him back.
Right.
Because he's probably like, dudes, it's gone.
It all went to his attorneys.
Kessler took it all.
Yeah.
Expected that legal filing will be reversed today and that in the next 24 hours he will officially be putting himself up for eligibility in the NFL supplemental draft.
Two things. It's the right move. This is what needed to happen. And I genuinely hope the kid goes on and does well and has a career.
That's another beautiful thing here. Maybe this is the hot take. He immediately becomes somebody that you can root for, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, I screwed this up, and now there's a consequence. Some people think it should be a more severe consequence because he gets to keep some money and he gets to go play in the NFL. If he was in the regular draft next year and he's a first-round draft pick, he's getting anywhere from like a $10 to $25 million signing bonus.
Yeah.
You don't get that in the supplemental draft.
Yeah.
He's going to get $500,000.
Yeah.
So there's some consequences here. And now you're like, all right, man, good luck. Have fun.
Yeah, and he did skirt a federal crime. So let's be clear. He's still getting off relatively scot-free. But
sure.
I do wish the kid well, and I think this is what needed to happen.
That's Spence Checketts. Stay tuned for the drive. And remember, go listen to the Mark Harlan interview. If you didn't hear it, when Spence did it live or when we replayed it, it's available on the ESPN 700 app, and it's on ESPN700sports.com. We'll do the Sean O'Connell Show again tomorrow on ESPN